Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show here on this beautiful Sunday night. After a week full of shitstorms and torrential downpours, I actually had a pretty nice weekend this weekend, so I can't complain. Hope you guys did as well. Um, Tonight, we're going to be talking about physical media. Um, there's so many different releases out there for Romero's films. Um, some are more scarce than others. So I figured tonight would be a good topic for a stream to get on here and talk about, um, the definitive releases of every George A. Romero film. At least of the ones that I own and can vouch for that I've seen. There's some stuff, from overseas, some more rare stuff, some stuff that I haven't purchased or checked out yet. But I have a pretty damn good sample size here, so I'm pretty much going to cover most of the bases. And if you guys in the chat or anybody watching along, I appreciate you guys joining me tonight for this. I think this should be pretty fun, pretty interesting. A lot of show and tell. I think people, especially on YouTube. I mean, that's it's a you know it's not your regular audio podcast on YouTube. There is video, so I think people like to have shit to look at, while you're while you're doing these streams. Um, so yeah, we're gonna get into that tonight. I'm probably gonna get into it here pretty quickly. Um, got a lot of shit to go through here. I got two big stacks of stuff here to go through, just to let you guys know, like, what is the best, release? What's the best version to buy? Because I know a lot of people, a lot of the stuff it's pretty hard to find. And especially when it comes to like Dawn of the Dead and your Night of the Living Dead, especially, there's so many different releases out there. It's like which one is the best to buy. So I'm gonna let you guys know tonight, at least my opinion. And if you guys disagree, let me know in the chat, and we'll definitely get into it. Um, Little hungover tonight, not gonna lie. Um, I had last night, the kid went off to camp with her grandparents for the night, so we had the house to ourselves. And usually every now and then I like to have, a Jack and Coke or 6, I don't know, something like that. Um, but man, I used to be able to drink like a champ back in the day and when I was younger. Um, I can't anymore. It literally takes me like 2 days to recover. That's why I don't do it very often. I don't get like every now and then, I'll have a couple of beers. That's nice to, relax or whatnot. But yeah, last night I was on a mission last night. So bear with me. I might be a little groggy, but hopefully I can kick it. I mean, like I said, I'm gonna need 2 days, so I'm not gonna feel 100% until like Tuesday probably. Um, but yeah, some big news broke this week. O.J. Simpson has died of cancer. I think he's like how old was he? 70. I can't remember off the top of my head. If you guys know. But yeah, apparently died of cancer. I don't think anybody really knew how bad he was. I think the last thing he posted on Twitter was a video of him talking about like, "Oh yeah, I feel better now. I'm good." It's it's one of those things. I mean, yeah, it's related to George, but George did the Juice on the Loose documentary, which is so weird. And I had a couple of different people comment or shoot me a message or I talked to. They were like, it's really fucking weird that I literally posted that documentary, um, like 2 days before he passed away. Uh, I'm starting to feel like I might be like bad luck or something like that. Like anytime I post anything or bring a video up or do anything, it's like, yeah, you might want to you might want to watch out for falling safes or falling pianos or whatever. But so it is a little weird in that way. But um I'm not superstitious or anything. But as Michael Scott would say, maybe I'm a little stitious. Um, but yeah, he died. I think it was in the middle of the week last week. I don't remember the exact day. But yeah, it's just really, really weird. Got a lot of traffic to my channel to watch that video, so it's kind of cool. That's one plus, I guess. But it's one of those celebrity deaths that like nobody really knows how to react to. It's like, yeah, you always nobody ever forgave OJ for, what he was accused of doing. I mean, yeah, I know he got off and all that, but um OJ was just one like you see some celebrities and it's like, maybe not murder, but but they've done some wrongdoing in their life. And over time, especially as they get older and especially when they die, people are like, oh, a little more forgiving. And it's like, yeah, he had his problems, but he did this and this. OJ, it was just like, welcome to hell, OJ. Like, like I didn't hardly see anybody that was just like, oh, he had his issues. Um, yeah, that's I guess it was just such a high profile case at the time. Like I remember specifically I don't even know why because I didn't know who the fuck OJ Simpson was when I was a kid when all this was going on. I was like 5 years old at the time or something like that. And I remember specifically me and my parents, uh, we went to Montgomery Ward's that day, which is an old department store or whatever. I don't know if you guys have them outside of where I grew up, but that was kind of the place to go back in the day. Um, and we just gotten home and my mom had bought one of those like little foot bath things, a little foot massage bubble bath things. And I remember sitting there in front of the TV playing with toys and just watching this white Bronco being chased by the police. And it was just like this huge thing. Like my parents were just so involved. My mom sitting there, soaking her feet or whatever the fuck. But like I remember, I don't even know why. It was just like because I didn't know who OJ Simpson was. I mean, I guess people that did know it, it was like I tried to explain it to my fiance. I was like, it'd be kind of like if Wayne Brady or somebody like that got caught murdering two people and then it was in a high speed chase and all that. It was kind of that because I mean OJ was beloved, like he was a beloved ex football player and he's in the Naked Gun movies. He was on TV. I mean, he was just a beloved figure in popular culture, and to think that somebody would do something like that, I think it was a pretty big shock to the country. So, but yeah, I don't really know if to say like rest in peace, OJ, or whatever. Um, but yeah, that was kind of interesting. I mean, that documentary, and the documentary itself is really like I first saw it um, a few days before I put it up. I was just like, oh, yeah, I think people might be interested in watching this because it's one of those things that you hear about a lot when it comes to Romero, but not a lot of people had ever seen. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's not a horror film or anything. There's not zombies. I mean, there is a there is a serial killer is the star of it. I guess he wouldn't be a serial killer, but a murderer. I guess we can accused murderer. I don't want to. He was, whatever. Um, but you can see. I think the best thing about that when it comes to Romero, when you look at those documentaries, is just look at the editing. You can see Romero's editing style kind of he was crafting, or honing his craft, if you will, in terms of his editing style and all that. And you can catch a few glimpses of some people here and there in the documentary. There's a part where you see Richard Rubenstein. He's walking next to OJ at one point. So it's a pretty interesting little piece of Romero history there. Um, that, like I said, not a lot of people had seen, but OJ, it was nice knowing you, buddy. Gotten here. Alpha, what's up, man? Grande in the house. Um, Grande actually just went to see Dawn of the Dead in theaters in the theater last night with Galen Ross and Christine Romero in attendance. That's pretty friggin' awesome. And he did get to meet them both too. And he messaged me. I had nothing but nice things to say. I mean, I could because Galen when I met Galen, she was awesome, and Christine Romero, like I said, is just Romero royalty in my book. Um, so that's pretty damn cool. Good to see you in here, man. I'll actually be on Grande's channel this coming Thursday for a roundtable discussion. So if you guys are not watching and not subscribed to Grande's channel, go do that. I'll be on there Thursday and talking about whatever. Pop Culture Corner. What's up? I think it's a new name I'm not familiar with. Woot, you say? This is what the kids say these days. Oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have kids. uh, I mean, what are your? I don't know. Like when you first, like when I read that comment, I was like, oh, I'm thinking about what was I talking about with kids? It's like, oh yeah, I guess the kid, went to stay with the grandparents or whatever. Um, I thought you might be talking about, if you can see, I got a little. This is what happens when your 3-year-old toddler does not want to go to bed when you tell her to go to bed, and she decides to, which makes sense, I guess. But she decided to claw at my face like a fucking gremlin, which kind of makes sense because I sat her down and we watched Gremlins 2 the other night. It was the first time she'd watched Gremlins 2, so I guess that makes sense. So yeah, if you're watching and you're wondering, did I get into a fight? Did I, try to throw a cat or something like that? No, this is what happens when you have a 3-year-old toddler who does not want to go to bed. It's fun. It's fun, pop culture. Let me tell you. One day, I think you need to experience that. Pop culture's got a bit of that coming up. Okay, not sure where at in the conversation. Let's see. We got 1911 Guitar Dude. What's up, man? I also love Romero's editing and blended soundtrack mixes in the documentary. Yeah, I mean, you can really see like the groundwork of Romero and like what would become of his style, going into Martin and Dawn and Night Riders and stuff like that. You can really see it in those documentaries. I still have so outside of the OJ one, I have the VHS collection that I bought from Larry at Living Dead Weekend back in October with a bunch of the Pittsburgh Steeler docs. There's like one on the Steel Curtain, one on Terry Bradshaw. Still haven't watched those yet because my VCR, I still got to, and my VCR is a piece of shit, so I'm kind of scared to put it in or it eats the tape or something like that. So I kind of need to upgrade my VCR, which in 2024, I don't know how, you may not have expected to hear that in the year 2024. I need to upgrade my VCR, um, but I do. Um, so yeah, cool. Good to have you in here, man. Good to see you. Um, yeah, we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and get into this physical media. Like I said, I got a lot here. It may take a while, and I know I'm gonna have quite a bit to say on a lot of these. Pop culture. My vid is on Juice on the Loose, posting tomorrow. People talking about how kind he is, and it was interesting. Yeah, that's the thing too. And like I said, that was the general consensus about OJ Simpson back in the day was just like, he was, beloved by everyone. It would like I said, it would be kind of like a Wayne Brady or I'm trying to think of like a good like maybe Michael Strahan now because he does a lot of like morning talk shows and stuff. He's just kind of but but yeah, it's very interesting. I'll definitely check that out. Pop culture. I'll need to. I think that's interesting. Um, so yeah, we'll go ahead and get into I got here. I got quite a bit. We'll go ahead and get into these physical medias, and some people. I know a lot of people. And like I said, it's 2024, and I'm over here talking about upgrading my VCR. But a lot of people in the year 2024 strictly rely on streaming. I don't know how many. I think people that genuinely love film and love movies, I think they do like to collect a lot of their favorite movies on physical media, and some people go above and beyond and collect any and everything they come across. um uh Hang on one sec. Speaking of the child not wanting to go to bed, here she is making a cameo appearance. So if you hear her screaming and crying in the background, I apologize. Hang on a sec. Here you go, pop culture. Sorry, I'm just gonna let you guys listen to this. This is my life. Hang on one sec. I'm gonna have to step away for a second, folks. I apologize. Let me see if I got something fun to watch while I do that. This is fun. Here, let's watch the Dawn of the Dead trailer while I do that. I'll be right back, folks.
In 1968, George Romero brought us Night of the Living Dead. It became the classic horror film of its time.
Not that room! Not that room!
Now, George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times.
It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill. This situation must be controlled before it's too late. They are multiplying too rapidly.
Dawn of the Dead.
Meet me on the roof at 9 o'clock. Getting out.
I don't believe
We're
it.
gonna
What?
get out in the chopper. We've got to survive. Somebody's got to survive.
They kill for one reason. They kill for food. They eat their victims.
Imagine, if you will, that something has gone terribly wrong.
Shoot it, man.
Now, accept the fact that there's no escaping the horrible consequences. George Romero brings back the dead. Night of the Living Dead has ended. Dawn of the Dead is here.
We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends. They are not. They will not respond to such emotions.
Operator dead. Post abandoned. We may never get out alive. It's everywhere. What the?
Okay, am I muted now? Sorry about that. I'm all thrown off my game. Live TV, folks. Yeah, maybe I'll go back and edit that out. But what the hell, this is life. You sure, pop culture, you don't want kids? It's fun. Grande says, I think there's like 20,000 different releases of Night of the Living Dead. I think that would be a pretty conservative estimate on that. There's literally, I mean, we'll go ahead and get into it here in a second, but there's literally, with the copyright issues and stuff, it's like I could distribute Night of the Living Dead if I wanted to, for all these years, and people did, believe it or not. The 4K of Night of the Living Dead is great. I got to meet Romero in the cast way back. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about it. Just like I was saying, physical media, is the future for me. I say that, non-jokingly. I think it's important going forward for people who actually love film and love movies. If I would say it's a big mistake at this point, to kind of put all your eggs into the streaming basket, because I don't know, for me personally, as somebody who likes, older, more obscure films or whatever, I don't want to be like, under the, what I choose to watch, I don't want it to be determined by big tech or whatever. Whoever's in charge of, putting these films out on the various streaming services. So yeah, it's important to get these, especially a lot of the Romero stuff. It's important to have these in your collection so you can pop it in and watch it anytime. Which I feel like most people, if you're watching this, I don't have to. I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but okay, let's go ahead. Let's get into this sucker because, like I said, I got quite a bit here, and hopefully no more interruptions. I'm throwing off my game here, folks. I apologize. So I guess the first movie we'll go into, and we, mentioned it here, Pop Culture Grande talking about it. There are like 20,000, at least from the time of, beta and VHS all the way up to, Blu-ray and 4K now. There's been so many different releases of Night of the Living Dead out there, and due to the copyright issues, it was just kind of public domain, and it was a title that anybody could distribute, could sell, could make money off of, could show it in any theater. I can't remember what it was. I was looking at how much Night of the Living Dead grossed in its original, throughout its time in the theatrical run, as opposed to like what it took to make it like budget wise, and it's insane, and it's really really sad that a lot of the people involved didn't make anything off of it. Although I do think there is an argument to be made that even though they weren't monetarily, rewarded for the work that they did to make Night of the Living Dead happen. I do think that it did give them careers. It gave them something, you know. It, it it's kind of like what's the old you know, teach a man to fish or whatever. That old thing, you know, give a man a fish he can eat, you know, once, teach a man to fish, you know, whatever the fucking saying is, I don't know. Um, but yeah, it kind of gave, you know, you know, it was the beginning for all those guys, George and Russ and John Russo, and you know, it gave them their start, and the success of that, you know, let those guys work and be a part of, you know, the film industry for years and years after that. Um, but yes, there are a billion different releases of Night of the Living Dead, a ton on VHS, a ton on DVD. I remember when that was the first DVD I ever bought, was Night of the Living Dead. And um sorry, I just got a text. There's so much going on right now. It's fucking, come on guys. It's 9 o'clock in fucking night on a Sunday. But yeah, it was the first DVD I ever bought, was like this um like knockoff DVD. Like I don't even remember what the name of the company that did that released it, but it was a really bad. I mean, it looked like they literally just lifted it right off of a VHS, and not even a good VHS, like one of the shittiest VHSs they could find, and just put it right on the DVD. Um, and you know, you'll see so many out there. They're in every like compilation, you know, those little compilation DVDs or box sets that you get. It's like, oh, you know, all the zombie movies, and it's like a bunch of stuff you never heard of, and then Night of the Living Dead is always on there. Um, but luckily, thanks to Criterion, we actually finally got a proper release of Night of the Living Dead restored in 4K. It's never looked better, never sounded better, and it's full of all kinds of extras and features, and some really awesome features where you actually get to see um, like some dailies and stuff from Night of the Living Dead, some different like outtakes and stuff like that, stuff that I'd never seen before. So it was really really freaking awesome to come across it. And that's, of course, this is the 4K release that Criterion did. They also did the Blu-ray, but they both look fantastic because they're both 4K restorations. But this is the 4K that Criterion just released not too long ago, maybe year and a half, 2 years ago is when this 4K came out. But yeah, it's this 4K 3 discs. Um, you know, it's got the 4K, the Blu-ray, and then all the bonus features and stuff like that. And it also comes with it's pretty killer Kyra Shone poster, as well as some liner notes. That's what I call them. But yeah, this would be, in my opinion, the definitive release of Night of the Living Dead out of the thousands and thousands that are still out there. This is, to me, this is the best release you can get. Now, this 4K, I think it's going to be a little pricey because it's Criterion. I think I've seen them. I think if you catch like a Criterion sale at a Barnes and Noble or something like that, you could probably pick it up. I think I got this one for $20 during one of those sales. But I think typically, like if you were just go out and I wouldn't buy from Barnes and Noble anyway. I mean, they're way overpriced on their shit. I mean, it's insane. It's like going into a Suncoast Video, you know, to buy things where everything's like triple the price that you would pay anywhere else. But so typically these run like 35, $40. But like I said, keep your eyes out there for, you know, for the, for all the sales and stuff like that, the Criterion. They usually have like a couple times a year, they'll have a Criterion sale. Um, but yeah, it's got all the, you know, uh, I'm reading. But yeah, it's got all the audio commentaries and stuff on there from, you know, the original, which I think was originally done like in '94 for the Laserdisc Elite release of Night of the Living Dead. So it is interesting to go back and listen to that. To listen to, because I mean, it's got everybody. I mean, it's George and Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman, Russ Striner, John Russo. Really, really fun commentaries to listen to, especially from that time period too, because you're getting this information, you're getting memories, you're getting stories. closer to when they actually took place, as opposed to, a lot of those people, now you start asking them, then it's hard. I mean, it's hard to, like, I could barely remember anything from, a couple of years ago, let alone, 50, what is it now? 55 years ago. God damn. So yeah, very cool to have those on there. Some archival interviews with Romero actors, Dwayne Jones, Judith Ridley, which I think are the same ones that I have on my channel. But yeah, just chock full of awesome stuff. I think it also says it has a program featuring filmmakers Frank Darabont, Guillermo del Toro, and Robert Rodriguez too. I don't know if I ever watched that. I don't remember that one right offhand. But yeah, a ton of shit on this thing. So, Night of Living Dead, it's got to go with this 4K Criterion release from a couple of years ago, 2017. That sounds like, okay, so 2017 is the year that they did the 4K restoration, because I remember that's the year that the Blu-ray came out, and this 4K just came out in 2022. So just a couple of years ago. So yeah, 100%. And there's a couple other good ones out there too, like the Lionsgate one that has the One for the Fire documentary that Felcher did, which Felcher's not the biggest fan of. I don't think that documentary turned out quite as well as he wanted it to. But I've always liked that documentary. I think it has a lot of really good parts to it. I love there's like, it's different segments, but there's a segment on latent image and the commercial business that Romero had back in the day. Always loved that segment where it was like him and Rudy Ritchie talking about how they first met, and it's great stuff. Felcher, anything like Felcher's pretty much worked on pretty much everything up here, I think, on all of these releases. And anything that Felcher works on, that's the best stuff when it comes to Romero, because him and Romero became very, very good friends over the years. So Romero had this, in interviews and stuff like that, Romero was more relaxed and he had more of a, he was a little more open about things when he was, discussing it with Felcher, as opposed to, anybody else. So those usually make for the best features and docs. Check chat here. Pop Culture says, I got to interview Kyra. She was such a lovely person. Kyra, I'll tell you guys, I have I don't know why, when I met Kyra back in October, ever since then, I've had like the biggest crush on Kyra Schoen. It's crazy. An older lady. I mean, she's still doing it. But yeah, super, super nice lady too. Nice lady. I sound like Norm Macdonald. You're a nice lady. Ryan Adkins, what's up, man? Good to have you in here. The first Night of Living Dead DVD I got was the Millennium Edition with the tombstone design on the cover. That's a good one. I have that one as well. There were quite a few good DVD releases of Night of Living Dead. That was definitely one of them. The other one was it had like the cartoon, Kyra Schoen image on it. I think that was Elite too. But yeah, the Millennium Edition, that's definitely, probably out of the DVDs, I would say the Millennium Edition was definitely the best one to get for Night of the Living Dead, I would say. Granny says, I still rock the Lionsgate with the red and black slipcover. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. That's a good one too. Shit, it's between that one and the Millennium one. Those are the good ones. So yeah, on DVD at least. There's been a few Blu-ray releases as well, but I think the Criterion is like that's the one. That's the definitive edition of Night of the Living Dead, in my opinion. Mayor's in the house. What's up, Mayor? I've got a Japanese Blu-ray edition of Night of the Living Dead. Got it extremely cheap from an Orbit DVD sale. That's awesome. Love to know which one that is. Japanese Blu-ray edition. Yeah, there's so many out there all around the world. It's insane. Granny says Orbit DVD rules, and Mayor says definitely. So that brings us to our next title here, and this one's so up next there's Always Vanilla, Season of the Witch, and The Crazies, and this is kind of a 3-for-1 deal here, because I think this is easily the definitive edition of all three of these films. Is from Arrow Video, and I think this was from 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 2017, Arrow Films. And that, of course, is the box set here of Between Night and Dawn. And it includes There's Always Vanilla, Season of the Witch, and The Crazies. It's a great collection too. And you can buy all of these individually as well if you don't want to get the box set. Because I know the box set now you can find them on eBay for 80 to $100 a lot of the times. A lot of the Region B versions. This is I think this is a Region A. I think I bought this at FYE or something like that when it came out. So these are a little harder to find for whatever reason. So those usually go for, I don't know, 120 sometimes. But it has a little book, comes with it, Between Night and Dawn. Contents here. It's got it's got a lot of those like art, not articles, but just write-ups from different people. Kind of like Second Sight, kind of like what Second Sight does with their books. Just little things from different people. Never read any of them, but it's neither here nor there. But yeah, you got there's Always Vanilla Arrow edition, and this one's fantastic. This one's got a it's a making of There's Always Vanilla featurette. It's called Affair of the Heart, and it's actually really interesting. George is not a part of it because they did this after George passed away, I believe. But you do get to hear from John Russo and Russ Streiner, and I think Judith Ridley as well. But you get to hear, their stories and their recollections making, because, for years and years and years, There's Always Vanilla was considered the lost Romero film. I mean, after its initial theater run, nobody had really seen it for years and years and years, and eventually it came out on VHS from Something Weird Video, I think, sometime in the 90s, and that was, I guess what we would call a boutique label now, but it was just kind of a lower tier thing, so there weren't a whole lot of those. I do have that one. I also have another release. I can't think of who put it out, but it's called it's the release of The Affair, which is what the original title of There's Always Vanilla was. But yeah, and it's got some awesome location videos with our good friend of the show, Lawrence DeVincent. It's 2-disc Blu-ray, and it's never looked better. I mean, it's one of those films that when the Anchor Bay DVD came out, and it was Season of the Witch, and it was that flipper disc. It had Season of the Witch on one side, There's Always Vanilla on the other, and those looked like complete shit. Season of the Witch was almost unwatchable for me even on that Anchor Bay, and I know they did their best with it, but it just the elements just weren't there. They just did not look good. And There's Always Vanilla looked pretty rough too, and this looks 1,000 times better than that Anchor Bay DVD, because I think they actually went back. Brand new 2K restoration from original film elements, so they actually went back. But I mean, Arrow does it right. I mean, that's anything with Arrow, and there's a few more titles from Arrow that we're going to talk about tonight. Season of the Witch, another great one, and of course, like with all these books, it's got the Arrow artwork, which is fine. But I've always anything that I buy that has like the 2-sided covers, I always go with the original artwork for whatever reason. Not to say that the new artwork is bad or anything, but I just prefer the original poster art on these. And this one's really good. This is the best that Season of the Witches look by far. I mean, you can actually watch and take film in and actually get what's going on. You're not distracted by how shitty it looks. But this one also has, it does have When Romero Met Del Toro, which is an interesting interview or conversation or whatever you want to call it, where Guillermo del Toro sat down with George. And it's such a charming little conversation. They talk it's about an hour long, but it's such an interesting conversation because you got Guillermo del Toro, who's like the biggest Romero fan, and Romero, who's just like, what do you like me for? You're Guillermo fucking del Toro. Like you make good movies, and it's kind of George's mindset, so it's funny listening and Guillermo's just asking him all these deep questions that you can tell that he's been thinking about for years. And he's always wanted to ask George about just random, like not random movies, but just like the more obscure Romero films that I'm sure George doesn't get asked a whole lot about. And at one point, George is just like, man, what are you talking about, man? Like, you're thinking way too hard into these movies. They're just movies, It's just George's humble nature, but it's a really good conversation. But the big thing about this one is it does include let me see how to word it so I'm not butchering, but it's an alternate extended version. It's the Jack's Wife cut, is what I just call it. It's about what, 14 minutes longer than the original version of Season of the Witch, and to me, it's the better version of the film. I know a lot of people, when it comes to like director's cuts and stuff like that, are like, we didn't need the director's cut. You know, it was fine the way it was, and now it's just kind of adds a little too much to it. But I think in terms of the story and and kind of the flow of the film, I actually think that the longer version, the Jackswell, which is put together, I mean, you can tell the pieces that were put back into place are look a little more rough than the rest of the film. Um, so you can tell what had been added and what hasn't. But if, you know, as a film as a whole, I think it's a much better film than what we got theatrically, and what we've had all these years. So, Season of the Witch from Arrow, definitely a big upgrade. Then, of course, the Arrow version of The Crazies. Now, The Crazies is also out on Blu-ray from Blue Underground as well. That one, I like that release because it does have the commentary with George and Bill Lustig, which is a really interesting commentary, listening to two filmmakers talk about making independent horror films. So you do get some really good questions, some really good stuff out of George and Bill Lustig for that matter, which I'm a huge Maniac fan. So it was great listening to those two guys sit and talk about filmmaking. But this is, you know, probably the definitive release, and I think both of these. I know Vanilla and I know The Crazies has some location videos with Lawrence de Vincent, and as does Season of the Witch. Okay, so um, but yeah, this looks fantastic. And like I said, you can buy these all individually. Like I said, the box set, you know, it's probably run you, I don't know, 75, 80, $100, depending on what we come across on eBay. But individually, I know you can pick these up from like I think Arrow's still maybe having a sale right now. But typically you can pick them up for, you know, $15 a piece or something like that. It's not bad at all for what you're getting and the quality that you get with Arrow in general. So yeah. For those three films, I mean, Between Night and Dawn box set is 100% the way to go. Grande says Arrow Baby, in my opinion, the best boutique label ever. It's definitely up there. I mean, just in terms of like the quality of the stuff that they put out, in terms of the titles that they put out, they actually put out, you know, shit people want to watch. So that's a big plus. Love Arrow. I've always loved it. They just do such a good job on everything that they do. Although Second Sight's, you know, Second Sight right now for me is right up there with Arrow. And we're gonna get to a couple of Second Sight releases here in a minute too. But Second Sight's right up there. I know Scream Factory, you know, people have their gripes with Scream Factory, but I think they always do pretty damn good work. They feel more like I feel like Scream Factory feels more like the mainstream boutique label, if that makes any sense. If that's not, you know, a complete uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like jumbo shrimp, as Cornette says. Doesn't make any sense. Like jumbo shrimp or government intelligence. Grande says, I've never upgraded the Crazies Blue Underground to the Arrow. I do own Season of the Witch Blue from them. Vanilla, I don't own. Well, I know you hate Vanilla, so that's fine. I love Vanilla. I think that's one of my you know, weirder favorite Romero films. I think there's just something about it, and it's like literally they captured this one particular moment in time. It was like this weird transitional period going from the 60s to the 70s, and it captured Pittsburgh in this just one period of time that went by so fast and changed so much. Because if you look at Night of Living Dead, going from Night of Living Dead to There's Always Vanilla, it's like a completely different world that these movies are taking place in. Like Night of Living Dead is in one world, and There's Always Vanilla is in this like weird trippy 60s acid trip world or something like that. I just think it's a really interesting film, and I think, you know, it's very flawed in a lot of ways, but I do like the performance from Ray Lane, and Roger McGovern I think is fantastic in it as well. But yeah, the Blue Underground release of The Crazies is pretty good too. Like I said, just for that commentary alone. Mayor's Always Vanilla is the only one I haven't ever seen. Well, you're not the only one. I've heard that a couple of times this weekend actually. Like I said, I'd recommend checking it out. It's interesting. It's one that George, I know for years and years and years, hated. He wanted nothing to do with it, didn't want to talk about it. Because he always said it wasn't a film that he felt like he directed as much as he was, there to edit and kind of keep everything together and try to make sense of it somehow. Because the story of how it was made is, it was started out being filmed for one thing, and then it just kind of became like a feature. It became its own completely different thing. And George's job on that was basically to kind of edit it together and try to make it make sense somehow. So for years and years and years, George was not a fan of that movie at all, and I don't think he ever watched it again after he was done making it. But I do know maybe maybe a year or so before he passed away, he did watch it again for the first time, and it was during that session that I think I was talking about a couple weeks ago, where that he did with Michael Felcher, where he went through and rewatched his entire catalog and did like an audio interview about every film after watching it. And Felcher said that while he was watching Vanilla, he being Romero, pronouns pal, um, while he was watching Vanilla, he started tearing up at one point. And Felcher said he didn't really ask why or really, dig into it too much. He just he thought maybe it was just like Romero was just kind of like, he'd never revisited this film, and he felt like maybe Romero was just, reliving a period of his life. That's really interesting. And he said once the movie was over, Romero just was kind of like, that wasn't too bad. That wasn't that bad. So I think eventually by the end, Romero had kind of come around on Vanilla a little bit. So um, I definitely recommend checking it out. But it's not going to be for everybody. I'll definitely tell you that right up front. The Elite Night of Living Dead Laserdisc has a funny opening. It starts with a crappy VHS presentation and then rewinds and plays its restored version, which was awesome for its day. Yeah, I remember that one. It's been a while since I watched that, but yeah, it's I definitely noticed because I remember the first time I put it in, I saw that when it opened like that, and I was like, man, this kind of looks like shit. And then it does I think on the DVD it like blows up and it's like um the Elite logo comes and then it goes into the THX, which they don't do that anymore. The whole THX. That was always fun back in the day to crank the volume up when that thing came on, just to feel like you were, I don't know, at the movies or whatever the hell it's supposed, whatever it's meant to make you feel like. I don't know. Pop Culture Corner, yes, carried that over to the DVD as well. Yeah, I was just talking about that. Love the artwork of it, better than the movie itself. I know, Grande, I know. I want to get that dual DVD for some reason. It's out there. I mean, I have it. I've seen it on eBay. They go for like $10 or something like that. It's not too bad. Um, a little flipper disc is what I like to call it. Love the Witch, Blue. The interview with Del Toro and George is awesome. Absolutely. Grande says the Jack's Code is the only way to watch the movie, in your opinion. I agree. I think that's the version that George wanted. Um, Chronic says Scream Factory sucks. I will say some of their titles here recently have been a little like, what, really? We're gonna do that? Maybe some of their I don't know, business model or whatever, maybe the off gassing incident from a couple of years ago. They're a little sketchy here and there. But I think when they put in the work and they, like the Creep Show 4K, I mean that thing looks gorgeous. But yeah, what do I know? What do I know? The Orphan release is a disgrace. Yeah, that's one of those. It's just like, really? We need that? I don't know. Maybe it has its fans. The mayor says, I totally get you. To me, Scream Factory seems like a big studio boutique company. Yeah, 100%. Which Shout Factory, I mean, Shout Factory does some pretty good work. And Scream Factory is just a subsidiary of Shout. Man, I have maybe one Shout Factory release here. We'll get to. Let's see, Sean, what's up, man? Good to see you. Have you seen the open matte version of Dawn, both Romero and Argento cut? I have seen the Argento cut open matte version, which I'll talk about here in a second. But I haven't seen, but I've only like the Argento cut's pretty much the only open matte version of Dawn that I've seen. I would love to see, which I get in this deep, but I'd love to see the director's cut in an open matte version, just because I mean, literally, you just see more of it. I'm a nerd like that. If somebody released the director's cut in open matte, which I don't know, it may be out there somewhere I'm not familiar with, but that's one I'd love to get my hands on and check out because that open mat's so weird. And like I said, we'll get into it in a second, but it's such a weird release. But I love that they did it. Love, love, love that they did it. So okay, that brings us to our next title. We'll go ahead and keep it rolling here. This one came out recently, and the film itself came out recently. So there's only like a handful of different releases of it now. But I think for Romero's 1974 lost film, The Amusement Park, I think this is pretty much the best version of it out there. I mean, I have two versions of this on Blu-ray. I got a French version as well. I lean towards this one because of the bonus features. Felcher worked on them. There's interviews, audio commentary with Michael Gornick, interview with Suzanne Romero, George's widow, Bonnie Heinzman. I mean, so there's some good extra features on here, some good bonus features, some good stuff. The film itself, I like the film. I think it's really, I think a lot of people were disappointed because, you look at the artwork and people immediately think like, oh, this is like some weird psychedelic horror film or something that Romero did. And it's not that at all. I mean, it kind of is in a way. To me, it's horrifying on a different level than like a typical horror movie would be, because it's dealing with aging and dying and kind of saying that, the world is one big amusement park. It's a lot of fun when you're young, but when you get older, like you don't feel like riding a fucking roller coaster anymore. But yeah, this is a Shudder release. RLJE Films. I'm not 100% sure who that is or what that is. But yeah, for the amusement park, this is the US release. Like I said, there's a French release. I know they did a VHS release. So there are a few different releases of it out there, but if you're a Romero completionist, this is the one to have right here. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it because it's a shorter film. There's not a lot of history to it. It was recently discovered and premiered on Shudder. I remember when that came out. To me that was like, I felt like a kid again when the day that was released. I couldn't wait to get home from work, and that was the first thing I did was pop that on and watch it. I think I watched it twice that night, just because the first time I was like, I don't know about that one. I'm gonna watch it again. I'll see how I feel about it, and I liked it. I think it's a really good film. I think Lincoln Mizell, of course, from Martin, is the lead guy in it, and I think his performance is amazing in it. I think I may have had him in my top 10 Romero performances when I did that countdown video a while back. There's a particular moment at the end of the film that I think is really, really strong in terms of Lincoln's performance in it. So highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. I feel like that's one a lot of people may have not seen. And if you have seen it, like I said, it's not for everybody. That's the thing about George's early work. And that's probably why it's my favorite, because it's so different. You can't really, box it into a category. A lot of them, like Season of the Witch, it's like, is it a horror film? Maybe, I don't know. Vanilla, what is it? There's always vanilla. I don't know. There's, different elements to it. The Crazies, is it a horror film or is it more of a hard-edged sci-fi film? Like, you don't really know. Amusement Park is definitely like that. It's definitely out there. It's its own thing. 100% pop culture. The horror of getting old. If you, like I said, when speaking of the horror of getting old, part of getting old is struggling to recover from hangovers and doing so while your 3-year-old is screaming at you and clawing at your face. So, but we all get old. That's part of it. I think that's why it worked for me, that movie. So that brings us to 1977's Martin, which is one of my all-time favorite films, 100%. And this is one that is owned by Richard Rubenstein, the film rights, and of course that's the whole big thing with Rubenstein is, why have we not gotten more Martin and Dawn releases in the U.S.? It's a topic I've discussed on here a number of times. It's a very popular topic on any channel or anywhere that people talk about physical media and horror movies, and they're like, why? Because for Martin, the last version of Martin that was released in the United States was in 2004, 20 years ago. and that was the Lionsgate DVD. In the US, we've had nothing since. So I have two picks here for definitive versions of Martin that you should own, and both of them are overseas. Both of them are foreign. One is UK. Yep, gets everything awesome. When it comes to Romero, um, but the first version I want to talk about is a DVD actually, that I think is very. I strongly encourage you to pick it up if you haven't. But that, of course, like we talked about a minute ago, the Arrow version of Martin on DVD. This came out. This was like early 2010s or something like that. No, yeah, 2010. So 2010, 14 years ago, the Arrow. What do they call this? The window box version of Martin. And the reason that I like this one a lot, the transfer is fine. I mean, it's Martin. It's an old film shot on 16 millimeter, that was intended to be black and white, but was changed to color. So it's going to look how it's going to look. But in terms of like what you get with this set, I mean, it's, 2 discs. The coolest thing about this set, though, that I highly recommend is that it does include Vampire on it. So, and that's one that, it's kind of hard to find and have in your collection. That's the whole reason I bought. I picked this up to begin with is because I'd never seen Vampire before. So if you ever wanted to own Vampire, this is a good way to do it. Now these are pretty pricey though. I mean, because I think they're out of print. And if you find them on eBay, they go for. I don't remember what I paid for this sucker. Seems all fucked up. I want to say I paid maybe $45-50 for it. I'm not sure. Like I said, out of print, but you get all kinds of cool shit with it. It's a double-sided poster. It includes the poster that they use is this killer Thai poster from Thailand. I love this poster. I just love like the little details in the artwork. Although it's funny, they got dude from Salem's Lot in it here randomly for some reason. I don't know why. They were just like, hey, vampire, let's throw him in there. Not sure who this lady's supposed to be either, but they threw her on here. Then it's also got the Arrow artwork poster as well, so pretty killer. Pretty killer little posters there. And then it's got these little cards, which I haven't opened any of them. I've kept them sealed, but they got the little cards, kind of like Second Sight does now. And also, little booklet comes with it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic release of Martin. Now, yes, Second Sight did recently do the 4K box set of Martin, which I have here as well. And this is a fantastic set. This is a great set. This is easily, if you're in the market to buy 4K and Blu-ray and you're done buying DVDs, I think a lot of people are like that. My buddy, I have a friend who just refuses to watch anything and anything on DVD anymore. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I'm trying to put all this stuff back together and get it all back together. But yeah, the Arrow Blu-ray or the Arrow DVD, I'm sorry. Full of commentaries, features. It's got the Making Martin the recounting documentary that was included on the Lionsgate release. It's got a European Romero documentary that I think was shot in Germany, mostly focused on Dawn of the Dead. It's pretty interesting stuff to see a lot of that behind the scenes stuff in Dawn of the Dead during that time period. But yeah, highly recommend that one, just for the fact that it has Vampire on it. But in terms of just a beautiful set with everything that you ever need, this is the Second Sight box set of Martin. Definitely the way to go. Of course, it's got all the, I don't even know what you'd call these, the little art cards, I guess is what we'll call them. There's Cuda. Savini, Stashless Savini as Arthur. Of course, you got Chris Romero there. And the man himself. One of my favorite performances in any Romero film, honestly, is Romero as Father Howard. I mean, He could. I mean, Romero was a pretty good actor. Like anything I saw him in, he was pretty good. A lot of the stuff though is like his stuff. So I mean, typically you know how you want something to, be portrayed in a performance if it's your words and you wrote it. And it's got a little book here. It's got some pretty cool photos, some different behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's a great collection. Then of course it's got the soundtrack, 3 disc. It's got the Donald Rubenstein soundtrack. It's got the 4K version of Martin, and then all the bonus features. And the bonus features on this, it's got some brand new documentary, brand new interviews and bonus features. And especially the big one for me is the documentary. It's like a full length film. I think it's about 80 minutes long or something like that. But it's definitely one of my favorite things that I've seen in quite some time when it comes to Martin. Um, so yeah, I highly recommend checking it. I think this one's out of print. This might be a little hard to find now, but you can still get the standard 4K that's out there. It's, honestly, like Martin's gonna look the way it's gonna look. It may, the Second Sight, I mean, is notorious for doing bang up jobs on their transfers. And Martin still looks pretty rough, but like I said, it's a 50-year-old film, shot 16 millimeter. It's gonna look the way it's gonna look. So that's why I kind of threw in the DVD as well. So I don't think it's, like I said, the DVD is still pretty expensive, but in terms of transfers, if you're gonna spend, I don't know what the standard 4K edition of Martin's going for now. But it's probably 25-30 bucks. So if you're going to spend that kind of scratch, go ahead and go all the way. If you can't find the box set, just see if you can find this thing, because the transfers are still pretty much going to look the same, whether it's on DVD, 4K, whatever. The 4K does obviously look a little better in a number of ways, but you want to own Vampire, don't you? Let's set those over there. Ronnie says, such a shame Martin and Don haven't had great US releases. I still have the bootleg of Martin. Whatever. It's the way to go. I'm hoping we'll get something soon. I've heard some rumblings and some whispers of maybe there possibly being a Dawn release. And typically, from what I've always heard when it comes to Richard Rubenstein, is if he wants to sell them as a package deal, which is probably why Second Sight, did the Dawn release and then did the Martin release a couple of years later. They probably had to purchase both of those properties and do releases of both. So that's what I'm thinking. If somebody in the US does get a hold of Dawn, whether it's an Arrow or I don't think Scream Factory, maybe you never fucking know. But to me, it would have to be Arrow or something like that would get a hold of it. And I would think that Arrow would also have to do a Martin release as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If we do get a Dawn release in the US, a Martin release is probably not too far behind. So, but yeah, it's insane. I don't understand. It's just, I don't know. I just don't know what Richard Rubenstein's waiting for. Like, I'm waiting for the perfect time to release these. It's like, at what time? When is the perfect time? I think, now is probably the best time to do it. If you're gonna do it, hell, it's his movie. He can do whatever he wants, I guess. Mayor said that looks like Catcher on a McCall from one of Fulci's Gates, the Martin Arrow poster. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that is it. I'm trying to think of what movie it is, because it does look familiar. I don't know. I'd have to look at it again. But yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Pop Culture Corner, the Anchor Bay DVD isn't that pricey. Yeah, the Anchor Bay DVD, not too bad right now. You can get it for probably $20, 15, $20, something like that. And now the great audio commentaries. And speaking of Richard Rubenstein, I mean, he's actually does some audio commentaries for both of those releases, the Lionsgate and the Anchor Bay. So it's really interesting to hear him and George kind of interacting and talking about these films. And I think Savini's on it, Amplis, of course. Donald Rubenstein is on one of them. I can't remember which commentary. But yeah, the second site release I think has both of the commentaries included. And Arrow DVD, I think, has both of the commentaries included too. I don't remember. I don't feel like looking. But yeah, really interesting commentaries. Highly recommend checking it out. Granny says Christine was saying she had 35 millimeter reel of Bruiser in her basement last night. So funny. Wow. Huh. I know they found the Martin Long cut and it's available in the Pittsburgh archive. Yeah, that's one thing too. Is like, will that ever get released? Will anything happen with that? I know the owner of the print, the guy who actually owns the print, does not own the rights to it. That would be Richard Rubenstein, so it'd have to be a Rubenstein call. And if probably I don't know what's going to happen with that. Maybe at some point they'll do something with it, but there's nothing imminent right now. Sean says, I have a digital copy of the American cut of Dawn and Open Mat. It's been bouncing around the internet, and you can tell that the scan isn't great, but it's still somewhat watchable. Okay, that's interesting. I think I did see something like that. Who put that up? It may have been in one of the Facebook groups. I think it may have been Larry, maybe Lawrence DeVincent that put that out. I don't know where he got it from, but Larry's got some weird shit. There's no telling what that dude has. But yeah, actually, now that you say that, I do remember watching that on either Facebook, one of the Facebook groups, I believe. That's pretty. It's incredible to see, because you actually see like boom mics, and at one point in one of the scenes, you see the boom operator, Robert Williams, just standing there in plain sight holding the boom. It's pretty funny. But for hardcore Dawn fans, it's like everything you dream of. You're just like, oh, let me see a little bit more of that wall. What else is in that room? It's crazy. We're all crazy. Thankful I kept my Anchor Bay release of Dawn when my mother was getting rid of stuff. Yeah, because I mean that's all we've got here in the U.S. Which we'll go ahead and get into Dawn here in a second. Let me finish with these. Granny says, have they made the long cut available yet in Pitt? I don't think so. I haven't heard anything. I've asked a couple of people, and I haven't heard anything definitive. But when it does, I mean, you better believe my ass is going to be there, and I'll be there watching it. But I don't think it's fully available yet. I know they have it. I know it's been digitized, so I know it's in the archive. And I know that Greg Nicotero does have a digital copy of it, because he owned the print. He's the one that ended up purchasing the print itself when it went to auction. He's the one. It was like $50,000 was the bid, and it won, and he bought it and donated it to the archive and whatnot. Luckily, thank God. I mean, Greg is awesome for doing that. But yeah, I don't think that it's available to watch as of yet. If yes, have you seen it? I'm curious to see it. No, I have not seen it. I am dying to see it. That's bucket list material stuff to finally say, because I'm like I said, Dawn is my favorite film. Martin is probably my second favorite Romero film. I love Martin. So yeah, I'm dying to see that. Pop Culture Corner says, oh man, I kept my Anchor Bay Dawn multi-cut set. Love it. Absolutely. And that will be a good transition to Dawn of the Dead, 1978. What the fuck? Oh, okay. John, I guess he's watching. John Vulo. He's just sent me the link on Facebook. I got to turn my volume down. I got a message on Facebook. Boom! I blew my ears out. But he sent me a link to the open mat. Awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. I'll definitely be checking that out. But yeah, I think I remember seeing that a while back somewhere. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead, 1978. In the United States, this is the absolute definitive best version of Dawn of the Dead to own. It's the Ultimate Edition from Anchor Bay, 2004. Again, 20 years has passed since this came out. And of course, there's been a few other releases since then. They did Anchor Bay did the Argento cut. Um, uh, on a standalone release, and of course they did a Blu-ray release, which the Dawn Blu-ray it looks fine. It's it's kind of hard to find. It's out of print now, so it is what it is. But in terms of U.S. releases, this is 100% the edition. This is probably my favorite. Obviously my favorite, but objectively probably one of the best releases, physical media releases that Anchor Bay ever did back in the day. And it's the artwork is so simple, and the story behind the artwork is pretty funny. They actually had a whole other thing planned for the artwork that they were going to do for this box set, because you got to think back at this time they had just done like the Book of the Dead edition of Evil Dead, which is literally the Book of the Dead. I mean, they were really going all out on their shit back in the day. And when Dawn of the Dead came on, they were like, oh, we obviously got to have something to try to match or, compete with our other releases. And they had something else completely planned. I think it was supposed to be like the black on this. Oh no. The black on this was supposed to be like crushed velvet or some shit. And it just wasn't going to work out at the final moment. And then I think within 3 days, they just came up with this art concept, and it went out, and that's what it was. And I think it's perfect. I love it. I mean, it's simple. It reminds me of, you guys know, in Spinal Tap, when they bring out the album and it's like, oh, it's like a mirror. You can almost see yourself. And it's like None More Black. Like, this is the None More Black version of Dawn of the Dead. But of course, it's got the US cut. It's got the director's cut or the Cannes cut. The Argento cut, then of course the documentaries, the commentaries. I mean, it's got the main forecast commentary on the Argento cut. It's got a Richard Rubinstein commentary on the director's cut. The documentaries, it's got Document of the Dead, Roy Frumkis's Document of the Dead, the Dead Walk documentary, which is one of the best documentaries ever done on Dawn of the Dead. So I mean, yeah, this is for US releases. You're not going to get any better than that. Now, overseas, speaking of the matte cut, if you want to check out the open matte cut, it was, I think originally, this is where it began. It's been on a few other releases, but over this Italian release, box set release, it's a 4K Ultra HD of Zombie Dawn of the Dead. And this is an awesome release as well. It's got, different posters and covers from all the European territories. How many fucking discs are in this thing? 1, 2. So this is like a 5-disc set. I mean, it's got all the versions of the film, including the open matte version of the Argento cut that we've been talking about tonight. It's got some other features on there. Like I said, it's an Italian release, so a lot of the features, commentaries, and interviews and stuff like that are in Italian. And I don't speak Italian, so I haven't watched any of them or really know what the hell's going on. It's one of those things that, like, one day when I have a lot of free time, I'm just going to sit down and translate all of it using like some online translator app or something like that, but I just haven't had the time to do that so far. Then it also has like these cards that come with it. And I guess this was like artwork that was submitted by different fans and stuff. And I guess this was supposed to be like artwork submissions for the cover, I guess. I don't know. If I remember correctly, I think it was. But some of these are pretty cool. I love this one. The little barcode with the zombies, and the barcode is, puppeteering the zombies. I mean, that's says a lot about the film. I don't know if it would catch many people's eyes normally, like, what the fuck is that? But if you know the film, if you've seen the film, and that's awesome. It's got that little bit of artwork there. It's pretty cool. It's got the main forecast, of course, George in the middle. You got Zombie, Dawn of the Dead with Flyboy on the front. Love this one too. This is pretty cool. It's got, Dawn of the Dead, George A. Romero with the escalators, zombies going up the escalators. I don't know what the escalators are leading up to. I don't know if that's the sun or what that is, but a little out there. And then of course, this is a pretty standard straight ahead bit of work there, but all great stuff. They come along with that in that box set. Now comes the process of putting all the shit back. Boop, boop. But yeah, great release. I mean, this release is the reason that I finally broke down and purchased a region free 4K player, because I had to see that open mat. I was like, you know what? Now's the time, because this is region locked, although the 4K is not. But I think so. Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like 4K. If anything from overseas in 4K is not going to be region locked, which I think they're trying to change that for whatever reason. Why can't I close this fucking thing? There we go. But Blu-rays, region locked Blu-rays from overseas will not play on US players. Anyway. And then, of course, the big bad release, probably the overall best release of Dawn that we've ever gotten, is, of course, Second Sight over in the UK. And that's this big monster right here. The big Dawn of the Dead box set. Bunch of, I don't know. I'm not going to spend all the time in the world going through every single thing that's on these. But, of course, you got your books, which I know one of these is this. This is the novelization of Dawn of the Dead by George Romero and the mysterious Susanna Sparrow. Got a hardback book in here too, Dissecting the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, which is kind of like we were talking about earlier with what was the release? But it's got like the booklet in it that has like a bunch of different little write-ups from different people. Jesus Christ. Jim Seranella's got something in here. Yeah, that other than that, I don't know any of the other people on this. I haven't read any of this either. But pretty cool. Then of course it's got the 3-disc soundtrack collection, which includes all the original library music and the DeWolf stuff and pretty much everything I think that was released on that Waxworks record here not too long ago is included on that 3-disc set there. And then of course you got the films and the bonus features, US cut, director's cut, Argento cut, every multiple cut of Dawn you can think of is on there, except for it doesn't have the open mat on there. The ultimate cut, which is everything cut into one, that's out there. I do have that on a couple of releases. I think one of the releases that I have, one of the box sets from overseas, actually included the ultimate cut on it. I can't remember which one it was. It may have been the Italian version. I'm not sure. But of course, the bonus features on this are amazing. Which is it's hard to follow the Anchor Bay stuff, because I mean, how do you beat the bonus features on that? I mean, it's pretty much a definitive documentary on that Anchor Bay, like a making of documentary on that Anchor Bay DVD with the Dead Walk, and then of course, the Document of the Dead. So I mean, it was like, well, what other documentary could they put on this to shine any more light on it? But they did a good job. I mean, they did a really, really good job with it's pretty much like a feature length. It's like about an hour long. The bikers and what's it called? Bikers and Zombies. Yeah, Zombies and Bikers. It's got interviews with a bunch of different people. And there's Memories of Monroeville, Tour of the Mall with Mike Gornick, Tom Savini, Tom Dubinsky. I mean, there's so much stuff packed in. I mean, this is, as soon as this thing went up for sale, I immediately made the purchase. And that was the first time buying anything from Second Sight that I remember, because, they did a Creep Show. When was that Creep Show release? But yeah, to me, Second Sight was kind of unheard of. I wasn't very familiar with it, but when I saw the artwork and all the features and all the work that they'd put into it, instant day one purchase. And I think these things go for a pretty solid price now. But yeah, this is, of all foreign and domestic releases of Dawn of the Dead, I think it's hard to argue that this isn't the definitive, release of Dawn of the Dead. Get back to some of these comments here real quick. 1911 Guitar Dude says, I just ordered a copy of the Arrow Martin release right now. I have the one. I have to have Vampire as I'm addicted to its soundtrack. Awesome, man. I'm glad you were able to find that and pick that up. But yeah, that's the best thing about Vampire to me is the soundtrack. I mean, that Goblin music is just. I love Donald Rubinstein's score. I think it fits the film better. But in terms of the music, I mean that is such a killer soundtrack. That's awesome that you got it, man. Is it the 5-minute clip or the whole movie? I don't remember what I was talking about when that came out. Let's see. I have the U.S. Blue signed by George, my prized possession, physical media wise. I actually have the Anchor Bay Blu-ray release of Dawn, and it's autographed by Tom Savini, which is cool. I wouldn't call it a prized possession per se, but anything signed by Tom Savini is cool in my book. Mayor says, or no, I'm sorry. Where we at? Sean, if there's any way to watch the Open Matt Argento cut online, please let me know. I'm sure there is. I'm sure somewhere, maybe. I can't think of anywhere off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But if not, like I said, a lot of the foreign releases, I know that there's I think a French box set that's out there that includes the open map version as well. Mayor says I've still got the flipper disc of the director's cut. Yeah, that I have that one as well. It looks so shitty. And the Argento cut from Anchor Bay, and I got the second sight 4K of Dawn. Yeah, those early Anchor Bay DVD releases of Dawn look so bad. But I mean, it was like early DVD, so pretty much everything looked pretty fucking bad back then. But while I don't dislike the remake, I quite like it. I do hate that they used the Dawn remake font on that release. Which release? Oh, you talking about the second sight? Isn't that what it is? Yeah, it is. I really never noticed. I never really cared to to really look into it too hard. But yeah, it does really look a lot like the remake. Me and Grande did a stream a few months back on Romero remakes, and we were talking about the Dawn remake. And at the time, I was like, Dawn's not too bad. The remake's not too bad. But I don't know. Over time, the more I think about it, I'm just like, that movie sucks. It makes no fucking sense. Like, I'm sorry, the remake makes no sense. There's no reason for anything that they do. It's like after the first 10 minutes, it's like, hey, we're going to the mall. Okay, let's go. Why? Why are you going to the fucking mall? Like, why is that your destination? And then they get to the mall and it's like, hey, we have to leave the mall and go to an island. Why? I don't know. Just because we got to keep the movie moving. I don't know. We got to be doing something. We can't just sit here all day. I don't know. Anyway, mini rant. I'll end it there. But yeah, it just makes no fucking sense. Mayor says, I wish that I could have gotten that Second Sight Dawn edition, but I'm happy to have their smaller box set. Yeah, the smaller box set's fine. Literally all you're getting with the bigger box set, I mean, yeah, it's pretty and all, but all you're getting outside of that is you're getting the novelization of Dawn and the book with the different write-ups and stuff in it. So, I mean, if you don't need that, I mean, I guess if you don't own the novelization of Dawn, it's pretty cool to have, but meh. See, Mayor says, is that the After Hours Mall edition of Dawn you're talking about? Yeah, it's had a couple of different names over the years, like the Extended Mall Hours cut, the After Hours Mall edition, the Ultimate cut, the Final cut. I mean, I think of the originally, I remember seeing it the first time I ever saw it on eBay. It was called the Red Edition, and I think it was a German. I think it came out of Germany. I think there's even a little mini. It's not a documentary, but like a behind the scenes thing that I found on YouTube a few weeks back, where it's just showing how that was edited together back in the day, like in the 90s. It was pretty interesting. It was all in German, so I don't know what the hell anybody was saying, but it was pretty interesting to watch. Ryan Atkins says, just sent you a link for that Ty Martin poster. I saw it recently when I was looking for that, the Untold Story poster that I ordered. Yeah, I think I was talking about. I love Ty posters in general. They're so weird. They're so out there. Um, but I just there's so much to look at. You know, when you put them up on your wall, it's like one of those things that you can just look at and kind of take in different, different aspects of it and the little minutia in it. Granny said, Christine says she boycotted the remake last night. It was so funny. I do think it's really good, if I'm being fair, but I get the gripes, especially from her. From her, the OG Dawn was so personal. Yeah, I never thought to ask Christine about her thoughts on the Dawn remake, but I don't remember George ever having really anything good to say about it. Like, I guess he owed the fact that he got land made. I mean, that was a big part of it. I mean, the success of the Dawn remake, Shaun of the Dead, the success of Shaun of the Dead, and zombies in general were just kind of making a resurgence at that time. So a lot of people say like, oh, George would have never made Land, or never gotten the chance to make Land without the Dawn remake. But I honestly think George's rise in the 2000s as like a pop culture icon was more due to Shaun of the Dead as opposed to the Dawn remake, because Shaun of the Dead kind of made George cool. Get out of here. Kind of made George cool at that time, like for younger. Like I remember, younger, like my cousin at the time. He was, probably what 7, 8 years old, playing games like video games and stuff, and he was just like, oh, tell me about George Romero. What do you like? You like Romero? I'm like, what do you know? Like, how do you know who the fuck George Romero is? But yeah, that's interesting though. Sean says, I was always thinking about taking the ultimate cut and fixing some of the music cues and the color correction. That would be awesome. There is some of the newer versions out there that are put out on Blu-ray from overseas, where they actually do a pretty good job of making the music cues and stuff a little more seamless. But yeah, those early, like the early versions of those cuts, I mean, it's distracting. I love it because I'm a big fan of it. So I like to watch it in its entirety, I guess. But I have like that was the version that I first tried to sit my fiance down, and we tried to watch it. And as I was watching, I was like, man, this is kind of distracting sometimes. Some of the like weird music cues and how things are. I could see how it was distracting for somebody who's just like watching it for the first time, Granny says Christine said she's never seen Diary or Survival because she was so mad with George post divorce. I imagine someone in the crowd was like, "Oh, Survival is so great," and misunderstood, and I was laughing. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I watched that fucking Festival of the Living Dead movie that the Saska sisters just put out on Tubi, which is supposed to be like a direct sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And in comparison to that piece of shit, Survival of the Dead is a fucking masterpiece. I apologize for ever saying anything negative about Children of the Living Dead is like a fucking masterpiece compared to that thing. That thing was so bad. I mean, it was on Tubi. So literally like the most enjoyable part of it, like I appreciated the parts where the commercials would start because I could be like, oh god, I gotta take a fucking break from that. But man, it was just such a piece of shit. So yeah, but that is interesting. I'm surprised, Christine. I'm not surprised that Christine had never seen Diary or Survival. I could understand that, um, but yeah, I remember when I talked to Christine and she brought up George and the divorce, and you could tell like it really took a toll on her, and she was still not. Which I think she's either remarried or something like that now, but you can tell it still is a sore subject with her, um, that whole thing. And I understand. I mean, they were together for what 20 over 20 years, so I mean I totally understand that. Ryan Atkins says, "What do you think of Dawn in 3D?" I liked it. It was fun. I mean, I much prefer watching it in 2D. I liked going back to the theater to watch it, in 2D the way that God intended. Um, but it was fun. It was a lot better than I was expecting. I thought some of the 3D effects work um, pretty well in certain parts, and it was cool the way they did it. It's a fun little gimmick, but you know, I just prefer to watch it in 2D, to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of 3D in general. I don't like 3D movies in general, but it's Dawn, so I was like, I gotta. Wow, made Children of the Dead look good. It must be bad. Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, literally, at least Children of the Living Dead had, the first 10 minutes of the film where you had Tom Savini kicking ass. The first 10 minutes of Children of the Living Dead is awesome. I love it. The rest of the movie is where it all goes to fucking shit. But the first 10 minutes with Savini is pretty badass. Mayor says my condolences for sitting through that Soska Sisters disaster. Yeah, I mean, it was like I was thinking about doing like a full review video at some point on it, but I don't even want to talk about it because it was just like, what the fuck is there to talk about? It was just embarrassing to watch. It was just like, what is there? Like, no, it didn't make any fucking sense. Just like, it was written by. I don't even know who would write it. Like, it was written by a complete dolt. I don't know how to explain it. It was bad. I'll just say that. I told Larry, I think the best way to describe it, it felt like Yoga Hosers with zombies. If any of you guys have seen Kevin Smith's brutal fucking movie Yoga Hosers, it felt like I was watching Yoga Hosers but with zombies. That's pretty much what it was. Grande said, yes, she remarried a guy that helped me make Dawn. Yeah, it was. I think it's the guy that was the owner of the mall or the ownership group of the mall. It was something like that. Trying to think. Can't remember his name off the top of my head, but yeah, it was that guy. He knew the owner of the mall. She said he was a local artist in Pittsburgh. I could tell it crushed her too. It said, yeah. Yeah, I can't think what the name of the group that owned the mall off the top of my head, but yeah, he was associated with that in some way. All right, let's get to the rest of these. We're an hour and a half in. We still got quite a bit to go here, so we're going to go through these pretty quickly. It brings us to Knight Riders, 1981, which I'm actually sporting my Knight Rider shirt today. I think the definitive version, the Knight Riders was one of the last Romero films I ever saw because it was kind of hard to find. DVD, Arrow put it out. Limited run, I feel like, because they're out of print and kind of hard to find now. But Anchor Bay put out the DVD, and then the Shout Factory. Yeah, Shout Factory did the Blu-ray of Knight Riders. And that's a US. I think this is UK release of Knight Riders from Arrow. I think this is the definitive release of Knight Riders. But yeah, it's got the audio commentary with George Savini, John Amplis, and Chris Romero. Some different interviews and some different features and stuff like that. It's a great release. It's 2-disc. It's got the Blu-ray and the DVD in it. So I think, definitive release for Knight Riders is easily the this UK Arrow release by far. And it's got some goodies in here as well. You get a card with Robert De Niro and Ronin. That's random, but whatever. But it's got a nice little booklet here, some color photos from the film. Again, what I call liner notes, pretty much. But yeah, great release. I'd love to see. I think Knight Riders is definitely one that we need to see a 4K release of sooner than later. I think that would look good. I mean, the transfer on this Blu-ray looks really, really good. It looks fine, but Knight Riders in 4K is one that I'd be very interested in seeing how it would turn out. So yeah, UK edition. In the US, I didn't pull it down. This one's probably a little easier to find, probably a little more inexpensive. It's the Shout Factory release of Knight Riders, which just still has, audio commentary, some interviews with Romero and Savini and Ed Harris. So a lot of the same stuff. But for my money, I think the transfer looks a little better on this Arrow release. But either one of those you can't go wrong with when it comes to Knight Riders. Yes, me too, Mayor. Night Riders is in my top 5 Romero films. I think it's a very underseen, underrated film. Um, I think, if I remember correctly, it was absolutely Romero's most personal film. But I also think it was one of his favorites. I think between that and Martin, I think were his 2 favorite films that he ever did. Love Night Riders. It's screening next Friday by me. I want to go. Why do you get everything good, Grande? This is bullshit. You get to go see Day of the Dead in theaters, and you get to go see Dawn of the Dead in theaters with Chris Romero and Galen Ross or Alexis Dubin, whichever one you were there with. And now you get to Night Riders is screening close to you. This is bullshit, man. We get nothing here. I didn't get anything. I think the closest place to go see Dawn this weekend was they were at a drive-in in Shelbyville, Indiana, which is like 3 hours away. They were having a triple feature of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and then Day of the Dead. And I was just like, my God, why am I not going to that? And it's like, it's fucking 3 hours away. Like, I decided not to. But yeah, we get nothing here. When Dawn was in theaters for 3D, and last year when it did the limited run, I ended up having to drive. Where did I go? Clarksville, Tennessee, which is about 2 hours away. Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is about an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes away. And then I had to go to Louisville to see it in 3D. And when I went to see it again, I was like, it's fucking playing in Louisville. I'm going to take a trip because Louisville's probably 2 hours away from me. So I always got to make a fucking trip out of it. You're just like, hey, it's playing down the fucking road. I'll be there. Lucky bastard. I've got that Arrow edition of Night Riders and the Anchor Bay DVD. The Anchor Bay DVD is pretty cool because of I'm just pulling down everything now. But the Anchor Bay DVD is pretty cool just because it's got the gold case. It was eye-catching stuff there. But yeah, that was the first edition of Night Riders that I ever owned. Ronnie says Christine was saying the opening night of Night Riders was the longest night of her life because the crowd didn't have any reaction and people walked out. That's interesting. If I remember correctly, was it Night Riders? I've heard stories where like the opening night screening of Night Riders, the sound mix was absolutely terrible in the theater. So I think that played a part in it. I think it was Night Riders that I remember hearing that story about. Where I think I remember hearing George talk about what a disaster that screening was. But yeah, love Night Riders, great releases. And Creep Show, 1982's Creep Show. This is one that's got a number of different releases. Of course, most recently, it's the 4K Steelbook release from Scream Factory, which I don't have anymore. I've been holding it up for the last month saying, hey, you want to win this? And now, Brett, 1911 Guitar Dude, has won it, and it's now not in my possession anymore. It's on its way, man. But you still have your standard 4K collector's edition from Scream Factory. This is a good edition. I'll say that. I mean, it looks fantastic in 4K. But in terms of a full edition, I kind of prefer this Blu-ray box. I guess you could call it a box set. It comes in like one of those hard shell boxes. This is not your typical regular slipcase. Like this one comes in your regular slipcase. This is like something you could fucking hit somebody over the head with and protect yourself in a fight if necessary. Hard, good quality case. Of course, you got the Blu-ray, all the features and shit. But it also comes with a cool little booklet that I don't think the 4K release has. And again, it's got some pictures and some different write-ups and some different stuff about the making of Creep Show. Very cool stuff. I've always been a big fan of just the look, the artwork on this thing. Like, this is one like Scream Factory artwork that I think is it just looks amazing. I just love that. Like, that's awesome. And I remember when these first came out, there was like a poster or something that you could get along with it, but those sold out pretty quickly. It didn't get mad. I'm not one that's like, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars extra so I can get the limited edition Scream Factory poster. I don't care about that. But yeah, I to me, this is the definitive version in the US of Creepshow. It's the Blu-ray. The transfer, I mean, still looks fantastic. I mean, it's Creepshow. I mean, Creepshow kind of looks fantastic on anything, DVD, VHS, whatever. I mean, it's just a beautifully shot, beautifully lit film. Um, but it looks fantastic on this. The 4K transfer on the actual 4K release, it looks amazing as well. And it's the same transfer that's on that Steelbook 4K release. But for my money, this Blu-ray release of Creepshow from Scream Factory is the way to go. But you can't go wrong with either one of them. I'm trying to think if there's like a bad release. Yeah, I guess there's like a bare bones, like Warner Brothers release on Blu-ray of Creepshow that they did a few years back. That one's like, why would you do that? The only thing that I'll say though, my only gripe with either of these is that it doesn't include Just Desserts, the documentary that Michael Felsher did for the UK release of Creepshow. I would have loved for that to have been included on either one of these or both. We did get some other, different features, some audio commentaries, a new audio commentary with Mike Gornick, roundtable discussion with I think it was Tom Atkins, John Amplis, Tom Savini, and Marty Schiff. I believe that's really fun. That's a really fun feature to watch. Listen to those guys talk. Interview with costume designer Barbara Anderson, who we just lost. All kinds of stuff. I mean, just chock full of features on this sucker. But yeah, I just mainly just for the box, like that hard shell box. I think it's just great quality, and just the artwork itself is fantastic. Mayor says, when I met Tom Savini, I had to have him sign an illustrated poster of Night Riders. That's awesome. To me, Night Riders is Savini's best performance in terms of as an actor. I think 100% Tom Savini's best performance. And boy, the first time that the first time I watched Night Riders, I wasn't expecting it, and I cried like a fucking baby. I was talking about this the other day. I'll admit it, I cried like a baby, because think about it, like, at the end of that film, when Savini breaks down and cries, like, you can tell, like, he's literally breaking down and crying. Like, growing up, like, Savini was, like, just this wild stunt man, special effects guy, and you're thinking, like, just the most badass guy in the world. And then you see that for the first time. You see Savini, like, crying, and it's just like, wow, I did not expect to see that. Like, hey, that touched me. But yeah, Savini's great in that. I think that's his 100% his best role. I still need to get the 4K of Creepshow. It's really, really good. They did a really, really good job on it. Like I said, though, Creepshow looks pretty damn good in anything, but in 4K, I mean, from the opening shot of the Creepshow house with the pumpkin in the window and stuff, like, it really pops. It really jumps out at you. You're like, wow, this looks great. This looks amazing. So yeah, definitely recommend picking that up at some point. Then that brings us to 1985's Day of the Dead. I have two releases here, two different editions. I think the definitive, although I love probably my favorite release of Day of the Dead is probably that Anchor Bay. Fuck it, I'll pull it down. I was trying not to pull everything off of my shelf tonight, but what the hell. The Anchor Bay release with the bub and the head that opens, and you see Dr. Logan and Dr. Tongue. This thing is so old and beat up. I've watched this so many times. Of course, it's got the little notepad stuff in it. This is probably my favorite release of Day of the Dead. It's got a great audio commentary with George, Laurie, Tom Savini, Amplis, I believe. No, Cletus Anderson, which is awesome, because Cletus passed away in 2007. This came out 2003, so this is just a few years before Cletus Anderson passed away. So it's awesome hearing him on this commentary, but it's also got a commentary with Roger Avery, who worked with Tarantino on like Pulp Fiction. I think he directed a film called Killing Zoe. So that's interesting. It's just full of stuff. I mean, the Many Days of Day of the Dead documentary. It's a 39-minute documentary on Day of the Dead. This is the version that made me fall in love with Day of the Dead for the first time. Because like I said, the first time I saw Day of the Dead when I rented it, I didn't like it. I was just like, man, this is not at all what I was expecting. Because I had seen, Dawn and all that before, so I was expecting Dawn of the Dead 2, but instead we got Day of the Dead. So at first I was just like, I don't know about this. But when this came out, I got this for Christmas one year, and I put it in, I watched it, and every little piece of this, every feature, every commentary, I just watched over and over again and just took it in. And I just fell in love with the movie after that. But I think in terms of like transfers and all that, I mean, this has got a brand new documentary on it as well, which I think interviews some other people that documentary didn't and kind of cover some different ground. And that's the Scream Factory Blu-ray release of Day of the Dead, which this came out in 20. It's been a while. I mean, this is a pretty old release. 2013. So yeah, 11 years ago when this came out. Honestly, we're probably due for a 4K release of Day of the Dead. The issue with that is that the last I heard, the original film elements, like the original negative for Day of the Dead, is kind of lost. Like nobody really knows where it's at, or so it'd be kind of hard to go in and do, a proper 4K transfer of it without having the original elements to do it with. I don't know if those will ever be discovered or whatever's going to happen with that. But honestly, if they do a 4K and they don't actually go in and do a 4K transfer, there's no point. It's like, well, you're just, you're putting something from the Blu-ray onto a 4K just to sell it again as a 4K. So I don't know. Maybe at some point, I think Scream Factory would obviously be the company that will be the one to do it. But I think that's one I hear a lot when people talk about things that need a 4K upgrade is Day of the Dead, 100%. But another great release, and this is a foreign release. This is from over in the UK, and again, Arrow, man, you can't beat Arrow. This window box release of Day of the Dead that Arrow put out. This is what year? I should have been prepared and had all this written down, but forgive me. 2010. So this came out 3 years before the Scream Factory release, but this thing is fantastic. The transfer on this to me, it looks a little better than the Scream Factory release. I think it looks awesome. But again, 2-disc. You got your Blu-ray and your DVD. You got your little booklet. And just like, the Martin release, which Dawn has one of these as well. I didn't grab that one. I should have, because what the hell, I might as well. But get your awesome poster art here. This is the Arrow poster art. And this is poster art from back in the day. I think I guess because it came out in the UK, so I'm guessing this is the UK poster. I've seen this poster art thousands of times before, but I've never once been like, hey, what's the origin of that? But yeah, I think it's the UK version. But the cool thing about the window boxes with these releases is that you have all these different artworks to choose from. So if you want this one, or even, you flip it around, there's 2 other designs you can choose from to kind of have it out. So it's a cool concept. You don't see a lot of the window boxes anymore from Arrow. This is kind of an older concept from them back in the day that they did for a lot of things. But I thought it was a cool concept, something different, kind of creative. I appreciate that. But this has also got, it's got all it's got the many days of Day of the Dead documentary. A lot of the stuff that's on that Anchor Bay release in terms of bonus features is on here, but the Blu-ray it's a commentary. It's a special commentary with Greg Nicotero, Howard Berger, Everett Burrell, and Mike Deek. So it's got a different audio commentary track that is only available on this Arrow release. And that's a fun audio commentary. That's one I've been thinking about putting up on the channel at some point. Because it's a really fun commentary hearing those guys, because it's literally just listening to 4 guys, that worked on the film, just kind of having a good time watching the movie. It's also got the Joe of the Dead documentary or interview. It's like an hour-long interview. It's available on my channel if you guys want to watch it. But it's just an hour-long retrospective interview with Joe Pilato from Day of the Dead, and it also has like a travel log with Joe Pilato, where it shows Joe at like a lot of the like some conventions and stuff like that over in the UK. So pretty cool stuff. And it also includes this little comic book, which I flipped through. You know, it's cute, I guess, but it's basically the origin story of Bub. I don't know who wrote this sucker. Uh, Hutchinson, Keating, and Zorno. I don't know who any of those people are, but it's basically like the origin story of Bub. You know how he. Before, I mean, it's pretty fucked up, honestly. Like the story that they went with in here, but you know, it's kind of reinforcing the idea that Bub is a good guy. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. It's a really awesome collection. I think in terms of just a complete collection for Day of the Dead. I mean, the Arrow UK window box set, very very hard to beat. Really really good shit on here. Um, moving right along. Let's see. Grande says, I never upgraded from that Anchor Bay DVD. It's so perfect. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's honestly, hopefully at some point we'll get a 4K, but the Anchor Bay DVD is fantastic. There's so much in it. Like I said, I the audio commentaries alone, the documentary is awesome. It's got behind the scenes footage from that's Savini's camcorder from back in the day. Mayor says, yes, I've got that Anchor Bay DVD of Day. I desperately want a 4K of Day of the Dead. Yeah, I think we all do. I hear that a lot. I think that's like one of the most requested Romero titles that needs a 4K release. But like I said, I don't know, the elements to do that. I don't know if they're there, and if anybody knows where they are. I would be shocked if Rubenstein doesn't have them in a vault somewhere, and he's just wanting a ridiculous amount of, because he doesn't own the rights to Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead is owned by Taurus Entertainment, which is the Doodlesons, I think is their name. But they own pretty much everything that Salah Hassanen owned. So, like, Rubenstein owns Martin and Dawn because they were independently produced, and he raised money for it, so he owns the rights to those. But everything after Dawn, Night Riders, Creepshow, and Day of the Dead were owned by Salah Hassanen, United Film Distribution Company. And when they sold to Taurus Entertainment now owns, and that's why you're getting. That's honestly why we've gotten all the shitty sequels and remakes of Day of the Dead and Creepshow that we've gotten to this point, is because they pimp this shit out to make a buck, and they don't care about quality. It's just, hey, let's make a shitty zombie movie for $100,000 and call it Day of the Dead Contagium or whatever the fuck. Anyway, I just got off on side. But yeah, I would love to see a 4K of Day of the Dead. That would be a funny concept, though, if Richard Rubenstein literally was holding, the negative and was just like, you can't have it. I don't know. Legally, I don't know if you can do that or not if you don't own the rights. I don't know. Not a lawyer. I remember seeing Day when it first came out, and I was almost the only person in the theater. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty par for the course. Which Day also came out, like, right around the same time as Return of the Living Dead, too. So it was, George was always a little angry about that. Little confusion in the marketplace, if you will. I'm happy to say that I got to see Dawn, Day, and Land at the theater when they first came out, and I got to see Night at a midnight screening back in the 80s. That's pretty awesome. I can say that I saw Land of the Dead in theaters when it first came out. But I'm getting old, but I'm still too young to have done cool shit like that. I would have loved to have seen, especially Dawn back in the day, like seeing that with an audience for the first time at that, how fun would that have been? Synth, what's up, man? Synth Addict, hey there, just finished a live stream. Yeah, I was watching some of that earlier. You were going through some of, you were playing some different, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, I was just chilling there before I got on here, and I was listening to what you're about. It was a synthesizer of some sort, but you were going through the different sounds or whatever. But yeah, good to have you in here, man. Good to see you. Mayor says I need to read that Bub comic book. It's pretty, like I said, it's short and sweet to the point, but it's pretty rough in parts. But it's like the Bub origin story. It's like before he died and became a zombie. It's pretty weird. Since those Day of the Dead spinoffs are so bad, oh, they're terrible. And the Creep Show 3, I mean, Jesus Christ. Like the TV series is fine. Like that's Nicotero and that's actually being done by somebody who actually loves the film and gives a shit. Um, but man, Creep Show 3, Day of the Dead Contagion, and the Day of the Dead remake itself is horrible. There was another Day of the Dead sequel or something, wasn't it? I think it was like Day of the Dead Bloodlines or something. That's the default, sequel name is Bloodlines. Any movie, any sequel to a horror movie, and the tag or the whatever the fuck the whatever you call it, the second title of it is Bloodlines. You know it's probably gonna be shit. A friend and I went to the. I'm talking about you went to theater to see Dawn Day. What we doing? A little confused. Since says yeah, an old. I know it sounded a little old. Korg DSS one synth sampler, classic 86 gear. Yeah, I thought it looked a little old. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's fun. Just like I was just tuned in, just sitting. I was like waiting to hop on here and do my thing, and I was just chilling. I just like listen to it. But yeah, good to see you. We'll keep moving here. We got a few more to go. Monkey Shines is up next from 1988. This is one that doesn't have a lot of releases in the US. I think Umbrella just did that big box set collection or whatnot not too long ago. I haven't picked that up yet, but this is the best release of Monkey Shines that you can get. Even on DVD, I think there was just like a bare bones MGM DVD or something back in the day. But for my money and from the ones that I've seen, this Blu-ray release from Eureka, I think this is a UK release as well, is probably the definitive version of Monkey Shines to own right now. Like I said, I haven't checked out the Umbrella version yet, but this is probably the best one you can get right now on Blu-ray. 2-disc set. You got the Blu-ray and the DVD. You got your little booklet here. And Eureka is a company that I don't own a whole lot from. So I'm not 100%, super familiar with Eureka. But they did a pretty bang up job on this one. So, and Monkey Shines is another one that I'd be very surprised if we didn't see a 4K of soon. I think it would be a pretty good seller. I'm not, but it's got, the audio commentary on here with George Romero, making a Monkey Shines, a lengthy retrospective with George A. Romero. Yeah, it's got all kinds of stuff, everything you'd want on here in terms of, because that's the thing, like in the US, I literally think that MGM, which I think Scream Factory did a release of Monkey Shines at one point. It's out of print now, kind of hard to find. But so yeah, you could either go with either one of these. This one may be a little easier to find if you have a region free player, but if you can get a hold of the Scream Factory, you're probably fine with that one too. I think it was Scream Factory that did that. Correct me if anybody if I'm incorrect on that, but I don't own it. So like I said, it's out of print, kind of hard to find, but yeah, this is the best version in my opinion. Because yeah, before that we just had that DVD from MGM and it's bare bones. There's like nothing on it. But yeah, that's probably your best bet. Like I said, I haven't checked out the Umbrella version yet. So that may be a little better. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Grande. For some reason, I never really liked Monkey Shines. I always want to like it more when I revisit it, but I'm usually just like, it's bad. It's not bad, but some think it's super underrated. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, man. I don't hate it, but it's probably one of my least favorite George films. It's probably up there with Two Evil Eyes, maybe some of the later Dead stuff. But yeah, it's just one that I don't really go back to a whole lot. Like when I do, it's like, it's well made and it's fine, but it just doesn't, kind of the same gripe that I have with the Dark Half, which I like the Dark Half more. There was a long period there where I preferred Monkey Shines over the Dark Half, but I think here recently, after going back and rewatching both of them not too long ago, I think I do prefer The Dark Half over Monkey Shines at this point. But both of those films to me just they don't have that George feel to it. They don't have that, that independent spirit, I guess, that I just love George, like his stuff from the 70s and the early 80s. I mean, it was a different feel, and I understood that. But yeah, it's fine. It's a cool movie, but it's definitely not one of my favorites. Since says sorry I got cut off. We went to see Day the week it came out. I liked it. My friend was, uh, and my friend was don't. Don't. We were huge Dawn fans from VHS since '83. Uh, okay. Sorry, typos. My friend didn't. Okay, that makes more sense. Um, yeah, like I said, first time I saw Day, I wasn't the biggest fan, but over time, I think, like most people, I think we've all fallen in love with it. Understand? Yeah, the Scream Factory. Does that work? There we go. There we go. Scream Factory did the Monkey Shines. Since says Monkey Shines is better after repeat viewings, but never great. Yeah, like I said, I'd never like when I first saw Monkey Shines, it was never like, wow, I love this movie or anything. It was just like, well, that was pretty effective. That was interesting. To me, I'm like I said, it just doesn't feel like a George film to me. But it was a well-made film. It was a very well-made film, well acted. There's nothing about it that's just like, oh, this is bad or shitty. Like it's fine. It exists. Mayor says just found the Bub digital prequel comic online. There's also a Bub comic book series, uh, or one shot. Yeah, I'm not sure. The only thing I ever knew of there probably is. There's all kinds of comic. I'm not a huge comic fan, so I'm not too hip on a lot of the Romero related comic stuff. Um, but yeah, I just knew from what was included on that set there from Arrow. Um, I never even bought the. Remember the Day of the Dead comics? The Day of the Dead comics that came out, not the Dawn of the Dead comics. I'm sorry, that came out right around the time that the Ultimate Edition from Anchor Bay came out. I never even picked those up, and those were cool. Like it came with like that box set. The Ultimate Edition came with the first comic, like a smaller edition comic book of it. But yeah, I've never picked those up either. Just not a huge comic book guy. It just never was my thing. But let's see, a couple more titles here. We're gonna get out of here. Two Evil Eyes, which I think I'm on record as saying is probably my least favorite Romero film. But in terms of releases, it's hard to beat. The Blue Underground, and of course, it's got the lenticular cover. I think that's what they call it. I call it the Mona Lisa cover. I'm gonna keep doing this to see if I can actually hypnotize any of you, because I'm kind of hypnotizing myself right now while I do it. Anyway, Blue Underground release, and they did this on 4K as well. This is the Blu-ray edition. But honestly, to be honest, when it comes to Blue Underground, you really only need, most of the time, you're fine with the Blu-ray, because their 4Ks look great, but their Blu-rays look just as great. Like their Blu-rays are fantastic. Like Fulci's Zombie, Maniac, the stuff that they did on, I mean, they look amazing on Blu-ray. So when you get the 4K, it's just like, oh, it is kind of an upgrade a little bit, but not 100%. So Blu-ray edition of this, it's a great release. 3 discs. Sorry, microphone. Includes the original soundtrack from Pino Donaggio. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Pino Donaggio. And this is one that I always kind of feel like it's got the booklet. I feel like it's more of an Argento film than a Romero film, because the Romero segment's fine, but the Argento segment is definitely the better segment in my opinion. And it's definitely a project that is more of the brainchild of Argento. So yeah, I've always felt like it's more of an Argento. So it's funny. I actually have the DVDs of Blue Underground that Blue Underground did of Two Evil Eyes in my Romero collection. And over there with my Argento stuff, I have this version, because it's kind of hard. It's like, which one do you put? It's like, I'll put it in both. But yeah, chock full of features. I mean, interviews with Argento, Romero, Savini, Claudio Argento, and Ozzy Argento, Adrian Barbeau. I mean, there's all kinds of shit on here. It's a great release. This is definitely 100% the definitive release of Two Evil Eyes. Like I said, the 4K is out there. I've seen it, but fuck, it goes for so much. Like there's no way. Like I think I saw it at our local FYE and it was like $60 or something like that. I'm like, no, there's no way. I'm totally fine with just the Blu-ray because, like I said, Blue Underground, their Blu-rays look just as good as a lot of companies' 4Ks. So that's that. And this is one that I have heard rumblings of possibly having a 4K release coming soon. Wink, wink. But as of right now, the Dark Half, the definitive release for the Dark Half is the Scream Factory release here. And this one I think is out of print too. This one's kind of a little bit hard to find. I think you can find them on eBay for fairly cheap. But yeah, I mean, it's fairly simple, not a lot to it. It's got some features, audio commentary with Romero. It's a fun commentary, actually. Sparrows Are Flying Again, the making of the Dark Half, all new retrospective with George Romero, special makeups, effects guys, Everett Burrell and John Bullich. So yeah, it's got a your documentary, some deleted scenes, stuff like that. So as of now, this is the best version of the Dark Half that you can buy, in my opinion. But like I said, I have heard some rumblings that there is a 4K on the way, so I'm going to be very curious to see what that release is like. I'm not sure who's doing it. I haven't heard any names of like who's going to be doing the release, but I do think this is a movie that'll look really, really good in 4K as well. What year did this one come out? Oh man, this tiny writing I can't hardly see. I can't find when this fucking thing came out. It's been a while. Like I said, it's out of print now. It's kind of hard to find, but yeah, if you can find it, go ahead and pick it up. If not, don't worry. There's something else on the way, I believe. Grande says, so many asked me if they should get Two Evil Eyes on 4K when it was released, and I'm like, I'm diehard for both guys, and I'm passing. Yeah, that's that's exactly my train of thought. I think like I love George, I love Dario. Those are probably my 1-2 favorite filmmakers of all time, and I just don't care about that movie that much. It's probably my least favorite Romero film and one of my least favorite Argento films. Maybe some of the later Argento stuff, maybe a little worse. It's like I said, Argento's segment and that's pretty cool. I mean, some of the makeup effects that Savini does in that film are pretty awesome. I think it's pretty underrated in terms of Savini's effects work, but it is what it is. Amir says, I really don't like Two Evil Eyes at all. And if I ever got it, I'd be like, where do I put it? What? With my Romero Argento. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. If I got it, where do I put it? Yeah, I have the DVDs in my Romero section and I have the Blu-ray over there with my Argento stuff. Just because, I was stuck in that predicament as well. Since says, what's the final word on the 4K Dawn set from the UK? Very clear pick. But tint was a bit yellow. Also, it's sadly not the theatrical version. Prefer Romero music edits and layering in theatrical. What's the final word on the 4K set of Dawn from the UK? Like my opinion? Are you asking my opinion? I think it's great. I think it looks fantastic. It is the colors are a little bright at times in some of it. It is kind of like the greens, especially like when you're outside in the trees. Like I've always loved the fact that Dawn is kind of a, more dreary, overcast feel, and I don't know. John Bullich was so talented, R.I.P. Yeah, he passed away a while back. Yeah, he worked on a lot of stuff with George, and he worked on the Night of the Living Dead remake with Tom Savini as well. Did great work on Babylon 5. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. A lot of those guys, that worked with Savini that spawned from working with Savini, like Nicotero and all those guys. Mike Deek, Mike Tursick, who just recently passed away earlier this year. He went on and he worked on some big time stuff, Jurassic Park and shit like that. A lot of those guys branched out. I mean, now you look at, K and B. I mean, it's like every movie ever. K and B. If you need effects, it's like they call K and B. Um, but yeah, what year did John Bulge die? I don't remember how long ago that was. Anyway, a couple more titles left. This is one that I showed off a couple weeks ago on a stream, and it's one of my I love this is one of my favorite releases of the year so far, easily. It's one that I've been saying that we desperately need a release of in the US, which we again are probably maybe more than likely going to get a release of it here sooner than later in the US. But of course, we're talking about 2000's Bruiser. Um, and I'm talking about this Studio Canal Blu-ray release, which just came out maybe a month or so ago over in France. So this is one you can pick up on Amazon France if you're interested in seeing Bruiser in high definition. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's fantastic. You gotta love. I love that artwork. It's so much better than the artwork that we got in that, because I mean the only release of Bruiser that we've gotten in the US is the VHS and DVD release from like 2000 2001 whenever it came out. So it looks like shit. Um and this one also in terms of features and stuff, this is pretty bare bones. But it does include the audio commentary with George Romero and Peter Grunwald on it as well. So that's a big plus. But in terms of if you want to see Bruiser in HD and see how beautifully shot it was, um, definitely recommend checking this out if you can make it over to Amazon France and pay a little extra for the shipping. It was worth it. I think I ended up it was like $40, I think is what I paid for this, which, maybe for a movie that a lot of people don't really care for, like Bruiser, $40 might be a little much, but for me, I've always been a big fan of Bruiser. Um, and I think like I said, once we finally do get a release of Bruiser in the US, an HD release of Bruiser in the US, I think people will start to rediscover the film and kind of see it with fresh eyes, kind of see it in really, good quality and all that. I mean, even the sound quality on this is amazing too. That's another thing that popped out at me as I was watching it. I was like, man, this sounds really good. So I mean, this is a fantastic release from Studio Canal of Bruiser. Highly recommend if you get the chance to pick that up. And then our final three titles here are pretty simple because they haven't of course haven't been around long enough to get a ton of different releases. Um, but for Land of the Dead, I definitely had to go with the Scream Factory special edition or collector's edition, whatever you want to call it, release of, because Land of the Dead Universal did just kind of your normal Blu-ray release when they did the DVD release. And this one came out a few years later. This one has a ton of different features. It's got the theatrical version and the unrated version. Um, it's got one of my favorite things. It's got an audio commentary with Matt Blasey and Michael Felsher and a couple other guys that played zombies in the Land of the Dead. So it was pretty interesting to hear those guys talk, although it was kind of sad because I think they recorded that a couple of days after George's funeral, sadly enough. But I just thought that was an interesting concept to get those guys to talk about it. Because like I've said in the past, I could listen to Felsher and Blasey talk about George Romero for hours and, be totally happy like a pig in shit. But yeah, tons of new features, all, interviews. It's got the Bringing the Dead Back to Life, special makeups featurette, Making of Land of the Dead featurette, Undead Again. Does it have, I'm looking for, forget what it was called, but back on IFC back in the day, when the movie first came out, they played, I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it was like a 30-minute, like behind the scenes special before Land of the Dead came out in theaters. I'm trying to see if this is on there as well. I don't remember. It's been a while since I popped this in and watched it. Yeah, there's so much shit on here, but it's a great release. This is definitely 100% the definitive release of Land of the Dead. I can't recommend it enough. Um, yeah, and Land of the Dead is another one that I think is kind of due for a 4K because I think Land would look really, really good in 4K. Maybe not some of the shitty CG that made its way into Land of the Dead, unfortunately. But I think in terms of the scope of the film and the city and all that, I think 4K would benefit it quite a bit. Um, Mayor says I've tried watching Bruiser a few times. I just can't get into it. That's fair. I mean, you're definitely in the majority. I've heard that from a number of people. Um, but I also think were, were you trying to like watch it on like a streaming service or something? Because if you were trying to watch it with that old DVD, I mean, it's kind of hard to watch now. But I also think Bruiser just suffered because when it came out, it was just kind of like, yeah, here you go. And it's like, where did this come from? It's like it didn't get a big release. It wasn't, highly promoted or anything like that. And the way that it was marketed, yeah, I think it gave people the idea that it was going to be like a slasher film or something like that, which it's not at all. It's more of a revenge. It's a more of a weird revenge film. Um, but I love some of the performances in it, like Peter Stormare. I think is you know mesmerizing anytime he's on the screen. I'm just like, this dude's insane. Um, but yeah, I definitely like I said, when it does get eventually a an HD release in the US, I definitely recommend giving it another shot. And trying it again because I think if you watch it, don't watch it with the idea that it's going to be a slasher or anything because it's not even eh, it has slasher elements I guess, but it's not at all. But if you look at the artwork on this thing from the US, like it looks like some like slasher film, and that's not at all what it is. Since this Bruiser is an odd one, great cast, but still unsure about it overall. Understandable. Bruiser's one that I loved because Bruiser was the first Romero film that came out when I became a fan of Romero. Like when I knew he became a real fan of Romero. That was the first movie that came out that I saw for the first time as on its original, because it didn't come out in theaters or anything like that. I think I saw it on Showtime or something first time. And I didn't like. I was kind of like what I was saying. I was kind of expecting it, just looking at the poster art and stuff, to be kind of like a slasher or something like that. I was kind of confused, but as I was watching, I was like, "This is not a slasher at all. Something completely different." But I just loved it. I was a huge Misfits fan at the time, so it was awesome just to say like, "Oh fuck, the Misfits are in this Romero film. I'm sold." But then you got Tom Adkins playing, the Tom Adkins role of like the smart ass detective. Stormare's awesome in it. And I think Peter Jason Fleming does a pretty good job in it. Um, and it's just the weird blank mask or just something. I just always been drawn to it. And I'm also salty that Danzig's Misfits wasn't in Bruiser. Can't stand any other incarnation of the Misfits. Well, I actually prefer Michael Graves to Clint Danzig, so take that, Mayor. Don't get me wrong, I love Danzig's Misfits. I love them to death, but in terms of like musically, like that time period there when Famous Monsters, that time period that album came out, Famous Monsters is just one of my favorite albums of all time. I just love that sound. There's just something, the sound changed a little bit on it, I think. But anyway, I don't want to start any fights in here, but I always thought Diary was the only one of the last three that was truly worth watching, even though most hate it. Yeah, that's I'll skip this one. I never liked Land for some reason. I always consider it the weakest Dead movie. That's interesting. I like Land quite a bit. I've when I first saw it in theaters, I didn't know what to make of it. I went and saw it 3 times on when it first came out, and I was just like, "Man, I wanna love this, but I don't know if I love it." I like it, it's okay. but I don't know if I love it. I really, really want to love it, but I don't know. But going back over the years and watching it again and kind of, because going into watching it for the first time with the expectations that I had of being like, fuck, I've been waiting for my whole life for this moment. It didn't live up to it, but over the years, while going back and watching it again and kind of taking it in for what it is, like I do appreciate it, and I do like Land of the Dead quite a bit. Okay, so you said you watched the DVD of Bruiser. Yeah, like I said, wait for a good version of it to come out, an HD version, because you can actually. I don't know. I think it's due to be rediscovered by a lot of people. So, Grande says Bruiser, in my opinion, this is truly his last truly great movie. To me, Bruiser and Martin are very similar in a lot of ways in terms of George's career. Like Martin was kind of his reintroduction into feature filmmaking, and Bruiser was kind of the moment. Because I mean, Bruiser was the first film that George did since Day of the Dead that was truly an independent film. And yeah, he had to go to Canada to do it, and it was a whole new crew, and it wasn't his typical Pittsburgh crew, but it was the start of a different chapter in George's career. So it reminds me of Martin a lot in that aspect, where we're and I love independent George. I just love George, the independent filmmaker. And Bruiser was, you know, that was from Day of the Dead. He, Monkey Shine studio stuff. The Dark Half was Orion, that was studio. And then, of course, he spent the 90s in hell trying to get shit developed in Hollywood. And Bruiser to me was George saying, fuck all this. I'm going to make a little movie in Canada, and I'm going to make what I want to make. I don't give a fuck if anybody and it's absolutely 100% George's most angry film. Like you can see in that movie that George was working some shit out. Like he was angry at that time. And why wouldn't you be? You just spent the last 7 or 8 years of your career getting rejected one screenplay after another. Resident Evil, you're going to do Resident Evil. No, you're not doing that. The Mummy was greenlit. It's like, oh, you're gonna get to make the Mummy movie, and it's like, no, just because of some bullshit, like he didn't get to make the Mummy. Just one thing after another. And you can tell when he made Bruiser, he was just like he was done with the establishment and all that shit. And I just love it. There's a spirit to it that I just that George had, that he put into Bruiser, that I just love. I like Graves better too. Yeah, thank you, Grande. Thank you. No, we're we're gonna start fighting here in a minute, guys. It's gonna be like the fucking mosh pit scene in Bruiser, where people just start fighting for no reason. Which it made me wonder, like, was that George's idea of what he thinks a mosh pit is? It's just people fighting for no reason. I don't know. Danzig has made some pretty terrible films. Yeah, that's true, Sent. Which I think Grande was talking about that the other night on his channel. Danzig needs to stick to music and comic books, 100%. I'm plugging our 90s Romero show on my channel. Yeah, we did me and Grande. This is probably how long ago? Seems like forever ago, man. We did a 90s retrospective, Romero retrospective on his channel a few months back. Really, really fun. Really good to dig into. Definitely go check that out. And if you haven't subscribed to Grande's channel, do so. He streams every weekend. Like I said, I'll be there. I'll be on this channel this upcoming Thursday for a roundtable discussion. So that'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to that. But last two titles here. I mean, I guess you can call this the definitive version of Diary of the Dead. It's the only version that on Blu-ray that they release is the Dimension Extreme Blu-ray release, which is pretty much an exact copy of the DVD release that they did. It's got the commentary. It's got the this fucking case is broken. Feature-length documentary. So the fun thing about these documentaries and features on these next two, which I'll just tell you the definitive version of Survival of the Dead, is the Magnet release, which has got the lenticular cover. But the cool thing about these is both of the documentaries, the behind-the-scenes stuff, was 100% Red Shirt Pictures, Michael Felsher. And so you really get to see, Like, to me, the best part about the Survival of the Dead release is the Walking After Midnight documentary that Felcher did in the interview. Because you could tell at one point in the interview, it's just Felcher and George hanging out, and George is just sitting back on the couch, and you can tell he's had a few. Like he was like me last night. He was just having a good time and just like joking, and that's the kind of stuff you get with Felcher's work as opposed to anybody else's, because George and Felcher were such good friends that George just had that comfort level with him where he could open up and just talk and say whatever he wanted to. Um, and same for Diary of the Dead. It's a Felcher behind the scenes thing. I remember when the movie was being made. I remember online seeing the video diaries that Felcher was putting out that was kind of leading up to the release of the film. Um, so yeah, the features in them both have audio commentary tracks with George. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the best you're going to get when it comes to these two films. As you know, as the films themselves, like I said, Survival of the Dead. I've talked shit about it before. It's like one of those movies. Like, it's not, doesn't hit for me in a lot of ways. But after seeing Festival of the Living Dead the other night, this thing looks like a fucking masterpiece. So I just want to apologize for saying anything negative about it before in the past, because it can get worse, folks. Let me tell you. And then Diary of the Dead, as Grande was saying, I saw Diary of the Dead at the Alamo Draft House in Dallas, Texas, in 2008 when I was there for the Texas Frightmare weekend, and actually Sean Roberts and what's the woman's name? Michelle Morgan. They were both at that convention that year promoting Diary of the Dead. So we went to see it at the Alamo Draft House because it was one of those. It was like a limited release. It wasn't playing. It wasn't a wide release thing. And the first time I saw it, I loved it. I thought it was. I definitely thought it was better than Land of the Dead originally. Over the years, there's pieces of it that's just like like some of the voiceover dialogue that Michelle Morgan does is kind of like iffy. It's a little too on the nose. There's different aspects to it that are bothersome, but I think as a whole, I think the movie's fine. I know a lot of people don't like I think that's the biggest issue that I have with it is probably the way, which I mean, I guess that's the whole point of it, I guess. But the first person Blair Witch style stuff, like it works at times, and then at other times you can really see like this doesn't really work that well for this. And it was a format that George had never really played with before, shooting a film like that. So it was interesting to see him kind of trying something new for the first time. But I don't think he quite understood how to use that technique effectively. But I know in terms of like what he was trying to say with the film and what he was, going for in terms of thematically, you kind of wanted it to be that, but I don't know. It works and it doesn't work for me on certain levels. It definitely feels more like an indie. It feels more like independent George, like George going back to his roots, making an. I think this was made. It made a shit ton of money on home video. I mean, it made its budget back and then some, which is why they immediately gave him the money to go make Survival, which did not make any money, and that's kind of why George's career ended there. But Diary was very successful on home video when it came out, and like I said, it has its good, it has its bad. I think the good in Diary is pretty good, and the bad is pretty bad. I think that's what I'll say. Mayor says I like Diary, didn't love it, but I definitely like it, and I've got nothing good to say about Survival. Well, hey, it is what it is. I'll say the same thing about Survival. There's good and there's bad to it. I'll say the bad outweighs the good a little bit in my opinion, but the good parts that I do like, I think, are really good, and the bad parts are really bad. But again, I'm a diehard Romero fan, so I'm going to try to see the positive in any of the films that he does, just because I'm connected to the filmmaker, to the artist in some way. So I'm a little more forgiving than if if Zack Snyder made Survival of the Dead, I'd be like, what a fucking piece of shit. Who would ever want to watch this fucking pile of garbage? It's awful. But the fact that it was George, and you can still see like George's sense of humor and his sensibilities in Survival of the Dead, and kind of what he was saying about tribalism, and which is we've gone full blown into at this point. I don't know. I think, like I said, there's good and there's bad, but the good is pretty good and the bad is really fucking bad. Synthetic says, and Diary was late to the found footage game. That's true. Blair Witch was long before it. Yeah, Blair Witch. I mean, people like you can say like Cannibal Holocaust or um, The Last Broadcast, I think was one, but none of them used that technique. Well, I would say Cannibal Holocaust maybe, but I don't really consider Cannibal Holocaust a found footage film as much as, because to me a found footage film is a film, and when it's done well and it's done successfully, in my opinion, is when they do kind of convince you that, oh, is this real? Is this really happening? I mean, Cannibal Holocaust. Yeah, when I first saw Cannibal Holocaust, I was like, fuck, am I watching a snuff film right now? Because I still don't know how they did some of the stuff in that film, which is probably why the filmmaker eventually got arrested for murder, because people thought that the film was real and he actually just killed these people out in the jungle somewhere. So I guess that would be considered the first one. But Blair Witch, the way the Blair Witch did it was they used it perfectly. The techniques and stuff, they used it probably the way that it should be, and it really should have just stopped there. But of course, with anything in Hollywood, if something's a success one time, they're going to try to duplicate it and do it over and over and over again. And I will say the way that George did it was a little different. It was more, your film students. You have a two camera shoot, and he tried to explain why it was edited together, and there was music put to it and all that. But what George was trying to say with Diary of the Dead, I think, is very very relevant today. It's like you see it all the time now. I mean, somebody fucking in a car accident or something, people pull out their phones. They got to film it, and it's just like anything. You see a fight, pull out your phone. Don't try to stop them or help or do anything. Just pull out your phone. You got to record it. And at the time, I didn't really understand that. That was one gripe that I used to have with Diary that I don't have anymore because it's true now. But you see in Diary when somebody's being attacked by a zombie and people are just standing by with cameras watching it. At the time, I was like, who the fuck would do that? You'd put the camera down and you'd go help your friends or whatever. But now we live in a world where literally you could be being attacked and murdered in front of your friends, and their first instinct is to film it and put it on TikTok or whatever. That's where we're at. And George, was kind of ahead of the game on that. He kind of saw that coming. I don't think he understood the technology as well as he should have to do something like that. Like how you would upload it. Like, cause I mean, back then we were still, I think MySpace was pretty much the main thing. Like YouTube was still in its infancy. Facebook really wasn't what Facebook is now. But, so yeah, at the time it was just kind of like, oh, that would never happen. That's not how things work. Nobody would just sit there and film something. It's like, no, that's what we do now. Oh, here comes a tsunami. It's wiping out every town in its wake. What shall we do? Oh no, I'll stand up here on this. I'll climb this tree so I can film it. It's like that's where we're at as a society now. So, anyway. Mayor says it's just sad that George got to make another film after Survival, but it is what it is. Yeah, he tried. I mean, that was the thing about George. He was always working, always writing, always had something that he wanted to do and produce, and he just never did. And that's just, Survival, didn't make the money, especially on home video that Diary made. And that's the unfortunate thing too, is that at that point they wouldn't let him make anything other than zombie movies. He wanted to make, which is, you can kind of see in Survival of the Dead. It's kind of like his Western. He just kind of wanted to make his movies, but they had to be zombie movies. But I would have loved to have seen, like, Bruiser was the last Romero film that wasn't a zombie film. I would have loved to have seen more like that from George, because I do love a lot of George's non-zombie stuff. Even though Dawn is my favorite of all time and all that. Would have loved to have seen something else like a Bruiser or like a Martin or something like that, but it's unfortunate. We never got that. But it is what it is. That's the way the movie industry works. I mean, you're hot, and that's just the story of George's career in general. You're hot one minute, you're yesterday's news the next. You come back and you're hot again. And then you just look at it. You start Night of the Living Dead, the early 70s. After the crazies, people were just like, I mean, George was in so much debt and people didn't want to work with him. He was just like, oh, you made big whoop. You've had 3 bombs in a row ever since then. You're yesterday's news. And then there's nothing. It's kind of like what Peter Stormare says in Bruiser. It's like you're yesterday's garbage, and or no, what is it? Your yesterday's pizza or something like that. But then he comes back with, Martin. Martin was kind of like a low, like indie, art house favorite back. It wasn't a big movie; it didn't make a ton of money or anything, but it kind of got Romero's name back, especially amongst critics and stuff. And then he makes Dawn, and now he's a huge name, and he's making Creepshow and working with Stephen King and doing all this. Then he goes and after the Dark Half, it's just like, oh yeah, the Dark Half didn't work out. Didn't it wasn't George's fault. The fact that the movie was made in 91 didn't come out until 93 and was just lost because Orion was a bunch of fuck ups. But then you got the 90s where everybody just thought, oh, George Romero, he must be dead. Like that's an old time. And then he comes back in the 2000s, and then after that, and that's the thing, you could not keep George down. A lot of filmmakers, they have that hot period, and then they're yesterday's news, and then it's just fucking over for them. They go in direct TV or something like that. You couldn't keep George down. Like George, you write him off and say, oh, George is done. He's yesterday's news. And then he comes back again. Then he goes away, and because he just wouldn't stop. He was always working, always writing, always wanting to continue to work. And the best filmmakers are the ones that do not stop. Even when Hollywood and everybody else writes you off, you still got stories to tell, and you still got work to do. And that was George. And that's why we love the man. Anyway, start wrapping this up here in a second. Any word on that unfinished Romero movie with that one collaborator? They had a script. Unfinished Romero movie with that one collaborator. Oh, are you talking about Twilight of the Dead? No, I've heard nothing about that ever since. Probably the last video that I did. I've heard no news, no casting, no nothing. I just know that they got Brad Anderson to direct, who was the guy that did Session 9 and a couple other things. But no, I've heard absolutely nothing else on it. And again, it's like I said, when I heard that news, I was like, I don't even know if I believe this. I feel like this is another Night of the Living Dead 2 situation. Remember when Night of the Living Dead 2 was going to come out, and it had, Laurie Cardill and Jarlath Conroy and Terry Alexander, and they were going to bring all those guys back. And people still ask about that movie. Like, where is that movie? And it's just that's a way, that's kind of a modern way to get funding to make an indie film now, is to make a little teaser trailer, take it around, see if anybody's interested, try to gain some interest to maybe do a Kickstarter or whatever. But I guess the money just wasn't there for them to do it. But hey, instead we got the Saska Sisters Festival of the Living Dead, because Lord knows we needed that. But no, I've heard nothing else since. I don't know what's going on with that, sadly. Mary says, I actually would have loved to have seen George make a Western. George would have loved to have made a Western. That's probably, anytime you hear George talk about his favorite films and stuff, I mean, he always talks about the old Westerns from back in his day, like Big Country and stuff like that. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen George do a Western. I mean, George wanted to do all kinds of things. And if you look at his body of work all the way up until, I would say, Creepshow, I mean, he was kind of just making, he wasn't pigeonholed quite yet as strictly a horror director. But to me, once he did Creepshow and became synonymous with Stephen King and that type of stuff, I think that Hollywood and I think people in general just kind of looked at him as, oh, he's just a horror guy. Because then he just did daily, and that's all he did after that. He never did anything non-horror again, unless you count Iron City Ass Kickers, which I didn't even bring that up. There's actually a release of that too, but what the hell. But yeah, George always talked about how he never wanted to be pigeonholed as just a horror director, and he wanted to make movies of all kinds. But you just got to do what you got to do. Since his survival is a Western, yeah, I mean, it really is on some level. I mean, the way it's shot, I mean, that is kind of George's Western. But to see like a Romero spaghetti Western or something like that would be pretty fucking awesome. But anyway, this has been fun, guys. I appreciate it. I'm sorry about my screaming child earlier, but she's at that age, and we're gonna have to do what we got to do. But I appreciate you guys sticking with it. It's been fun tonight. Glad to see everybody in the chat and chatting with everybody. Grande, Mayor, Synthetic. I know I'm going to miss quite a few of you guys. Sean, I remember Sean was in here. Ryan Ratkins, what's up? good to have all you guys stopping in. 1911 Guitar Dude, of course, Pop Culture Corner. Just gonna shout all you guys out. Glad you guys joined me for this. This was fun going through all these releases. Now I get to do the fun part of going back and putting all my shit back on my shelves where it goes, and that's gonna be fun. So that's the best part. Appreciate it, Grande. Glad you stopped by. I'll see you on Thursday. Looking forward to that. I'll be on Grande's Graveyard with a nice roundtable discussion with Grande and a couple other guys. I can't think of, I can't remember who all was going to be there, but we're just chopping up about any and everything. So check that out. What have we done? I don't know if I'll be doing anything next weekend or not. I'm on call for work next weekend, but I'll see what I can do. Maybe I'll do a little watch along or something. But I really enjoyed this. I appreciate everybody checking it out. I'm gonna hop off here now and go have a drink and make sure my child hasn't killed my fiance yet. So appreciate you guys in the chat. You guys have a great rest of the night, a great rest of the week, and as always, stay scared.